I want you to do something for me before I begin. Leave a comment below and tell me where you're watching this from, what city, what country, what quiet corner of the world you're sitting in right now. Because no matter where you are, I promise you'll understand this story. Betrayal doesn't have borders. Pain doesn't need a passport. And if you're here because something in that title grabbed you, because you felt invisible, dismissed, or cast aside by someone who was supposed to love you, then stay with me. This story isn't just mine. It might be yours too. So hit that subscribe button, because you're going to want to hear how this ends. And check the description box below. There are more stories like this one, stories about women who refused to stay silent. Now let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Eleanor Pritchard, and for 57 years, I believed I was doing everything right. I married young, 22, fresh out of college with a teaching degree and a heart full of dreams. His name was Daniel Pritchard, and he was the kind of man who turned heads when he walked into a room. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a smile that could disarm anyone. He worked in commercial real estate, making deals and shaking hands, while I built my career teaching high school English in a small town outside of Richmond, Virginia. We had 2 children. Our son, Benjamin, now 34, works as an engineer in Seattle. Our daughter, Claire, 31, is a pediatric nurse in Charlotte. Both of them built good lives. Both of them made me proud. And for decades, I thought I'd done the same, that I'd built something solid, something worth protecting. But here's what no one tells you about marriage. You can spend 35 years building a life with someone and still wake up one morning to discover you've been sleeping next to a stranger. It started small. So small I convinced myself I was imagining it. Daniel began coming home later. He'd always worked long hours, but suddenly those hours stretched from 7 p.m. to 9, then 10, then midnight. When I'd ask him about his day, his answers became clipped, distracted. He stopped looking at me when he spoke. He stopped asking about my day. He stopped touching me, not even a hand on my shoulder as he passed me in the kitchen. I told myself it was stress. A big project. The market was tough. He was getting older, feeling the pressure. I made excuses because that's what you do when you've invested your entire adult life into someone. You protect the investment. You ignore the cracks. Then came the phone calls. Late at night, his phone would buzz on the nightstand. He'd grab it quickly, glance at the screen, and slip out of the bedroom. I'd hear his muffled voice in the hallway, low and careful. When I asked who it was, he'd say a client. A colleague. Someone from the West Coast where the time difference made late calls normal. I wanted to believe him. God, how I wanted to believe him. But then the smell started. Perfume. Not mine. Something floral and young, the kind of scent a woman in her 20s would wear, not a woman like me who'd long since settled into subtlety. I'd catch it on his collar when I did the laundry. I'd smell it in the car when I borrowed it to run errands. And still, I said nothing. Because saying something meant facing something, and I wasn't ready. I kept teaching. I kept smiling at parent-teacher conferences. I kept hosting Thanksgiving dinners and sending birthday cards to my grandchildren. I kept being Eleanor Pritchard, the woman everyone thought had it all together. But inside, I was unraveling. One night in early September, I couldn't sleep. Daniel was snoring beside me, his back turned, and I lay there staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of my own denial pressing down on my chest. I thought about my students, bright-eyed 16-year-olds who still believed the world was fair, who still thought love was simple. I thought about the books I taught them, the stories of betrayal and revenge, of women who fought back and women who didn't. And I wondered which kind of woman I was. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I went through his phone. He'd left it on the kitchen counter while he showered, and my hands were shaking as I picked it up. I knew his passcode. He'd never changed it, never thought he needed to. It was our anniversary. June 14th. The irony wasn't lost on me. I opened his messages, and there it was. Her name, Jessica Lang. The messages went back months, hundreds of them. I scrolled through late-night texts, plans to meet, declarations of how much he missed her. Photos she'd sent him. Photos he'd sent her. I stood there in my kitchen, the one I'd renovated 5 years ago with subway tile and butcher block counters, and I felt something inside me crack wide open. Not sadness. Not yet. What I felt was a cold, clarifying rage. I took screenshots. I don't know why. Some instinct told me I'd need proof, that this moment would matter later. Then I put the phone back exactly where I'd found it and walked upstairs to get dressed for work. That day, I taught the scarlet letter to my junior class. We discussed Hester Prynne, the weight of shame, the way society punished women for the sins of men. One of my students, a sharp girl named Rebecca, raised her hand and said, "But Mrs. Pritchard, why didn't she just leave? Why did she stay in a place that hated her?" I looked at her, this girl who hadn't yet learned that leaving isn't always simple, that sometimes you stay because you don't know how to do anything else. Because, I said slowly, sometimes you don't realize you deserve better until you've already lost yourself. Rebecca nodded, scribbling notes. She didn't know I was talking about myself. That night, Daniel came home at his usual late hour. I'd made dinner, pot roast, his favorite, and set the table like I always did. He kissed my cheek absently and sat down, scrolling through his phone while he ate. "How was your day?" I asked, my voice steady. "Busy," he said, not looking up. "Closed a deal on that property in Glen Allen. Big commission." "That's wonderful," I said. And I meant it. Because I was already thinking about that commission, about the money that would soon hit our joint account, about how much of it was legally mine. We ate in silence. I watched him, this man I'd built a life with, and I realized I didn't know him anymore. Maybe I never had. After dinner, he retreated to his office. I cleaned the kitchen, loaded the dishwasher, wiped down the counters. Then I went upstairs to our bedroom and pulled out the notebook I kept in my nightstand, the one where I used to write lesson plans and grocery lists. I flipped to a blank page and wrote a single word at the top, *plan star. Because if there's one thing 35 years of teaching had taught me, it was this: information is power. Preparation is everything. And patience, more than anything else, wins wars. I didn't know yet what I was going to do. But I knew I wasn't going to do nothing. That night, lying next to Daniel in the dark, I made myself a promise. I would not be the woman who stayed silent. I would not be the woman who let him walk away unscathed. I would not be the woman who disappeared quietly into the background of his new life. I would be the woman who made him regret every lie. And so it began. The thing about betrayal is that once you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like one of those optical illusions. Once your brain recognizes the hidden image, it's impossible to go back to seeing only the surface. Every interaction became suspect. Every smile felt like a mask. Every "I love you" rang hollow. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. Instead, I became a student of my own husband. I studied him the way I'd studied Shakespeare in graduate school. Carefully, methodically, looking for patterns and subtext. I documented everything. I started with his schedule. Daniel had always kept a wall calendar in his home office, one of those large desk pad types where he'd scribble appointments in his terrible handwriting. I began photographing it every few days when he was in the shower or out running errands. I cross-referenced those appointments with his credit card statements, which I could access through our online banking. The discrepancies were staggering. Dinner meetings that happened at jewelry stores. Business lunches at boutique hotels. Client consultations at restaurants 40 miles outside of Richmond, in towns where he had no listings, no properties, no legitimate business. I made spreadsheets. I know how that sounds, calculated, cold. But teaching had trained me to be organized, and organization was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Every transaction, every suspicious appointment, every late night went into my records. I backed everything up to a cloud drive he didn't know about. And I waited. At school, I was the same Mrs. Pritchard I'd always been. I taught Hamlet I graded essays, I advised the student literary magazine. My colleagues noticed nothing. My students noticed nothing. I'd spent decades perfecting the art of composure, of presenting a calm exterior no matter what storms raged inside. That training served me well now. But at home, the mask grew heavier. Daniel seemed lighter somehow, happier. He hummed while he got ready for work. He bought new clothes, younger clothes, designer jeans and slim-fit shirts that looked ridiculous on a 60-year-old man. He started going to the gym again after years of letting his membership languish. He got a new haircut, styled with product that made it look deliberately messy. He was courting someone, and it wasn't me. One evening in October, about 6 weeks after I'd first found the messages, I decided to follow him. He'd told me he had a late meeting with a developer, that he'd probably grab dinner afterward and not to wait up. I said that was fine, that I had papers to grade anyway. I kissed his cheek and watched him pull out of our driveway in his silver Lexus. Then I grabbed my keys and followed. My hands shook on the steering wheel. I kept several car lengths back, the way they do in movies, praying he wouldn't notice my white Honda in his rearview mirror. He drove east on I-64, then took an exit toward Short Pump, a sprawling shopping district. He pulled into the parking lot of an upscale Italian restaurant called Stella's. I parked across the lot, far enough away to avoid being seen but close enough to watch the entrance. And I waited. 15 minutes later, she arrived. Jessica Lang was everything I wasn't. 28 years old according to the LinkedIn profile I'd already found, with long dark hair and the kind of effortless beauty that comes from youth alone. She wore a red dress that hugged her figure, heels that made her legs look impossibly long. She smiled as she walked toward the entrance, checking her phone. Daniel met her at the door. He kissed her. Not a peck on the cheek, not a friendly greeting. A real kiss, his hand on the small of her back, pulling her close. I sat in my car and watched my husband kiss another woman, and something inside me went perfectly, crystalline still. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I took out my phone and I took pictures. The angle wasn't great, but it was clear enough. Clear enough for what I needed. They went inside. I waited another 10 minutes, then I drove home. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, something I rarely did, and I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. I created a new folder on my cloud drive and titled it simply, Evidence. I uploaded the photos from the restaurant. I uploaded screenshots of his credit card statements with suspicious charges highlighted. I uploaded the calendar photos, the text message screenshots, everything. Then I did something that surprised even me. I Googled divorce attorneys in Richmond. I wasn't ready to file. Not yet. But I needed to understand my options. I needed to know what I was entitled to, what I could expect, what weapons I had in this war I hadn't asked to fight. I read reviews, checked credentials, made notes. One name kept appearing at the top of every list: Patricia Hendricks, a divorce attorney known for being ruthless in protecting her clients' interests. Her tagline was "Fighting for your fair share." I bookmarked her website. Daniel came home past midnight. I was in bed with the lights off, pretending to sleep. He undressed quietly, slipped under the covers, and was snoring within minutes. I lay there in the dark, my mind racing. I thought about our children. Benjamin and Claire didn't know yet. Should I tell them? Would they believe me? Daniel had always been the fun parent, the one who took them on adventures while I stayed home planning and worrying. Would they think I was overreacting, being paranoid? I thought about my parents, both gone now. My mother from cancer 3 years ago, my father from a heart attack 5 years before that. I wondered what they would say. My mother had stayed married to my father for 48 years, through his gambling problem, through his drinking, through everything. She'd believed in the sanctity of marriage, in working through problems, in turning the other cheek. But my mother had died bitter and exhausted, and I'd watched her fade long before the cancer took her. I didn't want to be her. The next day at school, I had a planning period during third block. Instead of grading papers, I called Patricia Hendricks' office from my classroom, my door locked, my voice low. The receptionist answered on the second ring. "Hendricks Law, how may I help you?" "I'd like to schedule a consultation," I said. "For a divorce case." "Of course. Can I have your name please?" I hesitated. Saying it out loud made it real. Eleanor Pritchard. "And is this regarding an active separation, or are you considering filing?" "Considering," I said. "My husband doesn't know yet." "I understand. Ms. Hendricks has an opening next Tuesday at 4. Does that work for you?" Tuesday. I had a faculty meeting that ran until 3:30, but I could make it. "Yes, that works." "Perfect. We'll send you a confirmation email with the address and some intake forms to fill out beforehand. Everything you share with us is confidential, Mrs. Pritchard." "Thank you," I said, and hung up. I sat there in my empty classroom, surrounded by posters of Shakespeare quotes and student essays pinned to bulletin boards, and I felt the weight of what I'd just set in motion. There was no going back now. I'd made an appointment. I'd taken a concrete step toward ending my marriage. But more than fear, what I felt was relief. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't just reacting. I was acting. I was taking control. That weekend, Daniel announced he had to go out of town for work. A property showing in Nashville, he said, 3 days. He'd leave Friday morning and be back Monday night. That's a long trip for a showing, I said mildly, folding laundry at the kitchen table. It's a big property, he said. Commercial complex. Worth my time. I'm sure it is, I said. Friday morning, I kissed him goodbye and watched him drive away. Then I went back inside, sat down at my computer, and booked a consultation with a private investigator. Because if Daniel thought he was the only one who could keep secrets, he was about to learn exactly how wrong he was. If you've ever felt like you were 2 steps behind in your own life, like everyone else knew something you didn't, then you know exactly how I felt in those weeks. But here's what I learned. The moment you stop trusting blindly and start looking clearly, everything changes. And if you're finding yourself invested in this story, in how far I was willing to go, then do me a favor. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about women who refuse to be victims. Because this was only the beginning. The private investigator's name was Raymond Cole, and he operated out of a small office in a strip mall off Broad Street. The office was exactly what you'd expect, cramped, cluttered, with metal filing cabinets and a desk buried under manila folders. Raymond himself was in his early 60s, with grey hair and the kind of face that had seen too much and learned to keep its opinions quiet. Mrs. Pritchard, he said, shaking my hand. His grip was firm. Please, sit down. I sat in the worn leather chair across from his desk, my purse in my lap, feeling oddly like I was at a doctor's office about to receive bad news. Except I already knew the diagnosis. I just needed him to document the symptoms. I appreciate you seeing me on short notice, I said. Happy to help. Your email mentioned suspected infidelity. Can you give me the details? I pulled out my phone and showed him everything. The text messages. The photos from the restaurant. The credit card statements. The calendar inconsistencies. I'd organized it all into a folder, chronological and thorough. Raymond scrolled through it, his expression neutral. You've done good work here, he said finally. Honestly, with this much documentation, you might not even need me. I need more than screenshots, I said. I need proof that will hold up. I need to know exactly what I'm dealing with before I make my next move. He nodded slowly. What kind of timeline are we looking at? Is he suspicious? Does he know you're aware? He has no idea. He thinks I'm the same oblivious wife I've been for 35 years. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. He's supposedly in Nashville right now for business. He left this morning. Raymond's eyebrows rose slightly. And you don't believe that? I know for a fact he's not in Nashville. He doesn't have any properties there, and I checked his calendar. There's nothing scheduled. Where do you think he is? With her. I think they've gone away together. Raymond leaned back in his chair. If you're right, and I can document them traveling together, staying in a hotel together, that's about as solid as it gets. But my services aren't cheap, Mrs. Pritchard. We're looking at a retainer of $3,000, plus expenses. $3,000. That was nearly half my monthly salary. But I'd been preparing for this. I'd opened a separate bank account the week before, one Daniel didn't know about, and transferred $5,000 into it from our savings. Money I'd inherited from my mother that I'd deposited into our joint account years ago. Money that was legally mine. That's fine, I said. What do you need from me? I'll need his car information, his cell number, recent photos, any other details you have about his routine or this woman. Then I'll tail him, document where he goes, who he's with, get photographs and video if possible. I provided everything. By the time I left Raymond's office an hour later, I felt lighter somehow. I wasn't alone in this anymore. Someone else knew. Someone else was on my side. That night, I slept better than I had in weeks. Daniel called me Saturday afternoon, his voice cheerful. Hey, honey. Just wanted to check in. The showing went well. Might have another one tomorrow. That's great, I said, standing in my kitchen making tea. How's the hotel? Oh, you know. Standard business hotel. Nothing special. How are things there? Quiet. I'm catching up on grading. Thinking about going to the farmer's market tomorrow. Sounds nice. I'll probably be home Monday evening. I'll text you when I'm on my way. Drive safe, I said. Love you, he said, the words automatic, meaningless. You too, I replied, and hung up. I sat down at the kitchen table with my tea and wondered where he really was. What hotel they were in. If she knew he was married. If she cared. My phone buzzed. A text from Raymond, * got a location. Richmond International Airport this morning. Tracking from there. *. So he'd flown somewhere. Not Nashville, I'd bet money on that. I texted back, * thank you. Keep me updated. *. Sunday passed slowly. I went to the farmer's market like I'd said I would, buying tomatoes and fresh bread I didn't particularly want. I ran into Margaret Torres, a fellow teacher, and we chatted about the upcoming fall festival at school. I smiled and laughed and played my part perfectly, but inside, I was counting the hours until I'd have proof. Monday morning, Raymond called me. I was in my classroom between classes, and I stepped out into the hallway to answer. Mrs. Pritchard, I've got what you need. My heart hammered. Tell me. He flew to Charleston, South Carolina. Checked into the Harborview Inn under his name Friday afternoon. Jessica Lang was with him. I have video of them entering the hotel together, checking in, going up to the room. They've been there all weekend. They went out to dinner Saturday night, walked along the waterfront Sunday morning. I've got extensive footage. They're not being careful. Charleston. A romantic weekend getaway in one of the South's most beautiful cities. I'd always wanted to go to Charleston. Daniel knew that. We'd talked about it for our 30th anniversary. He'd said we'd go someday. He'd gone without me. With her. Mrs. Pritchard? You still there? Yes, I said, my voice hollow. Yes, I'm here. I'm driving back to Richmond now. I'll have a full report with all the footage on a flash drive for you by tomorrow. But Mrs. Pritchard, this is ironclad. If you're planning to file for divorce, you've got everything you need. Thank you, Raymond. I'll come by your office tomorrow afternoon. I hung up and leaned against the hallway wall, my eyes closed. Students rushed past me, their voices a blur of noise. The bell rang for next period. I needed to get back to class. I needed to teach * Romeo and Juliet * to a room full of 15-year-olds who still believed in love. I pushed myself off the wall and walked back into my classroom, my smile firmly in place. That night, Daniel came home around 8. He looked tanned, relaxed, happy. Hey, he said, kissing my cheek. Good to be home. How was your weekend? Fine, I said. Quiet. How was Nashville? Productive. Really productive. I think we're going to close on that property. He was such a good liar. 35 years, and I'd never known how good. I'm glad, I said. I made chicken for dinner. Are you hungry? Starving, he said, and disappeared upstairs to change. I stood in the kitchen, listening to his footsteps above me, and I thought about Charleston. About them walking hand in hand along the waterfront while I'd spent the weekend alone, buying vegetables I didn't need and pretending my life wasn't falling apart. I thought about the flash drive I'd pick up tomorrow. About Patricia Hendricks, the divorce attorney. About the spreadsheets and the evidence and the plan that was finally coming together. And I thought about revenge. Not the hot, impulsive kind. Not the screaming matches and thrown dishes. I'd never been that woman. But there was another kind of revenge, the kind that required patience and precision. The kind that took everything from someone slowly, carefully, so they didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. That was the kind of revenge I was good at. Daniel came back downstairs in sweatpants and a t-shirt. We ate dinner together. We watched the news. We went to bed. And the whole time, I was planning his destruction. Tuesday after school, I drove to Raymond's office and picked up the flash drive. That night, after Daniel fell asleep, I went downstairs to the living room with my laptop and watched it all. There they were, pulling up to the Harborview Inn in a rental car, laughing as they checked in, kissing in the elevator, walking hand in hand through the historic district, feeding each other bites of food at a candlelit dinner, looking like any other couple in love. Except she wasn't his wife. I was. I watched every second of footage, and with each frame, my resolve hardened. Wednesday morning, I called Patricia Hendricks' office and moved my appointment up. She had a cancellation that afternoon at 2. I told my principal I had a dentist appointment and left school early. Patricia's office was in downtown Richmond, in one of those renovated historic buildings with exposed brick and modern furniture. She was younger than I expected, maybe mid-40s, with sharp features and sharper eyes. "Mrs. Pritchard," she said, shaking my hand. "Tell me what's going on." I told her everything. I showed her the flash drive. I showed her the financial records, the screenshots, the calendar photos. I laid out 35 years of marriage and 3 months of betrayal on her polished desk. Patricia watched the footage without expression. Then she looked up at me and smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It was the smile of a predator who'd just spotted prey. "How much do you want to hurt him?" she asked. It was the first time anyone had asked me that question. It was the first time I'd let myself answer it honestly. "As much as legally possible," I said. Patricia's smile widened. "Then let's get to work." The plan came together over the next 3 weeks, piece by careful piece. Patricia filed the divorce papers but held them. She didn't serve them yet. That was strategic. The element of surprise would be crucial, she said. Let him think everything is normal as long as possible. Let him get comfortable. Let him get careless. Meanwhile, I prepared for what Patricia called the event. "You need to control the narrative," she explained during one of our meetings. "Right now, he thinks he's in control. He's living this double life and you're none the wiser. But when this comes out, and it will come out, you want to be the one who tells the story. You want witnesses. You want people on your side before he has a chance to spin it." "What are you suggesting?" I asked. "A public revelation. Something memorable. Something he can't deny or minimize." Patricia leaned forward. "Do you have any major family events coming up?" I thought about it. Thanksgiving is in 3 weeks. Perfect. Who hosts Thanksgiving? We do. We always do. Both kids come home, and my sister Janet usually drives down from Maryland with her family. How many people total? Usually around 12. Patricia nodded. That's your moment. You gather everyone who matters, you break the news in a way he can't escape, and you have witnesses to his reaction. It protects you legally, shows you weren't hiding assets or acting in bad faith. And emotionally, it puts him on the defensive. He becomes the bad guy in front of his own children. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. And perfect. Won't that ruin Thanksgiving for everyone? I asked. Patricia shrugged. He ruined your marriage. I think you're entitled to ruin his turkey dinner. I left that meeting with a new sense of purpose. Thanksgiving was 3 weeks away. I had 3 weeks to finalize everything. I threw myself into preparation with the same meticulous care I brought to my teaching. I made lists. I coordinated with Patricia on timing. I confirmed that Benjamin and Claire would both be home. Benjamin was flying in from Seattle, Claire driving up from Charlotte. I called my sister Janet and made sure she and her husband Tom would be there with their 2 kids. And I acted like nothing was wrong. Daniel, for his part, seemed blissfully unaware. He continued his late nights, his mysterious phone calls, his absences. I'd stopped following him. I didn't need to anymore. Raymond had given me more than enough evidence. Now I just needed the right moment to use it. One evening about 10 days before Thanksgiving, Daniel mentioned that he might have to work the day after Thanksgiving. Black Friday. I said, chopping vegetables for dinner. I didn't think real estate agents worked holidays. This client is only available that day. Big commercial investor, flying in from California. It's too good an opportunity to pass up. Another lie. I wondered if Jessica celebrated Thanksgiving with her family. I wondered if he'd promised to see her Friday. Well, that's unfortunate, I said mildly. But I understand. Work comes first. He looked relieved. Thanks for understanding, Elle. You're the best. Elle. He hadn't called me that in years. It was his old pet name for me, from when we were young and I was something precious to him. Hearing it now felt like a slap. I try, I said, and went back to cooking. Thanksgiving Day arrived cold and bright. I woke up early and started the turkey, my hands moving through the familiar motions while my mind spun ahead to what was coming. Benjamin's flight was due at noon. Claire would arrive by 1. Janet and her family were expected around 2. Dinner was set for 4 o'clock. Daniel slept late, then lounged around in his pajamas watching football. He seemed happy, relaxed. He had no idea this was his last normal Thanksgiving. His last normal day. At noon, I picked Benjamin up from the airport. My son looked good, he'd lost weight, let his beard grow out. He hugged me tight. Hey, Mom. Good to see you. You too, sweetheart. How was the flight? Long. But worth it. I've been looking forward to your cooking for weeks. We made small talk on the drive home, and I studied his profile, wondering how he'd react later. Benjamin had always been closer to Daniel. They bonded over sports, over guy things I never quite understood. Would he hate me for what I was about to do? Would he think I was being vindictive, cruel? Would he be right? Claire arrived an hour later, breezing in with her usual energy. She hugged me, then Daniel, then Benjamin. The house filled with noise and laughter. Janet and Tom arrived with their 2 teenagers, Emma and Connor, now 16 and 14. More hugs, more chaos. I moved through it all in a strange fog, smiling and orchestrating while my heart hammered against my ribs. Patricia had coached me on exactly what to say, exactly when to say it. Everything was timed perfectly. By 4 o'clock, we were all seated around the dining room table. The one Daniel and I had bought 15 years ago from a furniture store that had since gone out of business. It could seat 12 comfortably. I'd set it with my mother's china, the good stuff I only used on holidays. The turkey sat golden and perfect at the center, surrounded by all the traditional sides. Mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, stuffing. I'd even made Daniel's favorite, sweet potato casserole with the marshmallow topping. Everyone settled into their seats. Daniel sat at one end of the table, I sat at the other. Traditional. The way we'd always done it. This looks amazing, Eleanor, Janet said. You've outdone yourself. Mom, seriously, this is incredible, Claire added. I smiled at them. Thank you. I wanted this to be a Thanksgiving we'd all remember. Daniel raised his wine glass. A toast, he said. To family. To being together. To all the blessings in our lives. Everyone raised their glasses. To family, they echoed. We clinked glasses. We started passing dishes. The conversation flowed, talk of jobs and relationships and upcoming plans. Benjamin told us about a project he was working on in Seattle. Claire talked about her patients. Emma complained about her calculus teacher. Normal, happy family noise. I barely heard any of it. My pulse was pounding in my ears. I kept waiting for Patricia's text, the signal we'd agreed on. Halfway through the meal, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out discreetly and glanced at the screen. Patricia, asterisk documents are filed and logged. You're clear to proceed. Asterisk. This was it. No turning back now. I took a sip of wine for courage. Then I set down my fork and cleared my throat. Actually, before we go any further, there's something I need to say. Something important. The table quieted. Everyone looked at me. Daniel smiled indulgently. What's that, Elle? I looked at him, really looked at him. This man I'd spent 35 years with. This man who'd promised to love me, honor me, forsake all others. This man who'd done none of those things. I filed for divorce this morning, I said calmly. The papers were submitted at 9 a.m. The silence was absolute. No one moved. No one breathed. Daniel's smile froze on his face. What? I filed for divorce. On the grounds of adultery. I looked around the table at my children, my sister, my niece and nephew, all of them staring at me in shock. I thought you all should know. I thought we should address this as a family, since family is apparently what we're celebrating today. Mom, Benjamin said slowly, what are you talking about? I kept my eyes on Daniel. His face had gone white. Ask your father. Ask him about Jessica Lang. Ask him about their romantic weekend in Charleston last month. Ask him where he really goes when he says he's working late. Claire's hand went to her mouth. Dad. Daniel's chair scraped back. He stood up abruptly. Eleanor, this is not the time or place. No, Daniel, this is exactly the time and place. My voice was steel. I stood up to face him across the table. You've been having an affair. 4 months. Maybe longer. And I'm not going to pretend anymore. I'm not going to smile and cook your favorite foods and play the oblivious wife while you destroy our marriage. This is insane, Daniel said, but his voice shook. You're being. I have proof, I cut him off. Video. Photos. Credit card statements. Text messages. I have everything, Daniel. And so does my attorney. Janet's mouth opened. Tom looked between us, confused. Benjamin stood up. Dad. Is this true? Daniel's eyes darted around the table. Trapped, cornered. I watched him realize there was no escape, no lie smooth enough to cover this. His children were staring at him. His sister-in-law. His nephews. Everyone waiting for him to deny it. He couldn't. This is... Daniel started, then stopped. He ran his hand through his hair. This isn't. Eleanor, you're making a scene. I'm making a scene. My voice rose despite myself. I'm making a scene. You've been sleeping with a woman half your age for God knows how long, spending our money on her, lying to me every single day, and I'm making a scene. Mom, Claire said, her voice small. Is this really true? I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking but steady enough. I pulled up one of the photos Raymond had taken, Daniel and Jessica kissing outside the Harborview Inn. I held it up. This was October 23rd. A Friday. You told me you were in Nashville. I looked at him. You were in Charleston. With her. Claire took the phone from my hand. She stared at the photo, then passed it to Benjamin. I watched my son's face crumble as he looked at the evidence of his father's betrayal. Dad, Benjamin said quietly. How could you? Daniel's face had gone from white to red. Anger was replacing shock. This is private, Eleanor. This is between us. You had no right to bring this to the family like this, to embarrass me. Embarrass you? I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my ears. You're embarrassed? I've spent 3 months finding out my entire marriage was a lie, and you're embarrassed. Mrs. Pritchard, Eleanor. Tom started, clearly uncomfortable. Maybe we should. But Janet cut him off. No. Tom, be quiet. She looked at Daniel with disgust. You son of a bitch. Eleanor has been nothing but devoted to you. She raised your children. She supported your career. She gave you everything. And this is how you repay her. Daniel turned on her. This is none of your business, Janet. The hell it isn't. She's my sister. Connor and Emma sat frozen in their chairs, their teenage eyes wide with shock. This wasn't how family dinners were supposed to go. This wasn't what Thanksgiving was supposed to look like. But I was past caring about decorum. I was past caring about anything except the truth. I want you to leave, I said to Daniel. Now. This is my house. This is our house. Marital property. And right now, I'm asking you to leave before I call the police and have you removed. You can't. I can. I've already spoken to my attorney. You have no legal right to force me to share this space with you while the divorce is pending. So you can leave voluntarily, or I can call 911. Your choice. Daniel looked around the table again, searching for allies. He found none. Benjamin wouldn't meet his eyes. Claire was crying silently. Janet's expression was stone. Tom looked deeply uncomfortable but said nothing. Emma and Connor just stared. Fine. Daniel spat. Fine. I'll leave. But this isn't over, Eleanor. You think you can just destroy me? You think you can humiliate me like this and get away with it? I met his eyes steadily. I think you destroyed yourself. I'm just making sure everyone knows it. He grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair and stormed toward the front door. We all heard it slam a moment later. Then the sound of his car starting, tires squealing as he backed out of the driveway too fast. And then silence. I was still standing, my hands gripping the back of my chair. Everyone else remained frozen in their seats. The turkey sat getting cold in the middle of the table. My mother's china gleamed in the light from the chandelier. Claire broke the silence with a sob. She pushed back from the table and ran upstairs. I heard her bedroom door slam. Benjamin stood up slowly. He looked at me with eyes full of pain and confusion. Mom, why didn't you tell us? Why like this? Because he needed to see, I said. My voice came out steadier than I felt. He needed to understand what he did. What he destroyed. Not just our marriage, our family. He needed to face it. But Thanksgiving. He ruined Thanksgiving the day he cheated, I said. I just made sure everyone knew whose fault it was. Janet stood and came around the table to me. She pulled me into a hug, and I realized I was shaking. You did the right thing, she whispered. That took courage. Did it? Or was it cruelty? In that moment, I honestly didn't know. Benjamin walked out of the dining room without another word. I heard the front door open and close more quietly this time. Through the window, I could see him sitting on the front porch steps, his head in his hands. Tom cleared his throat. Eleanor, I think maybe we should go. Give you some space. No, I said quickly. Please don't. I'm sorry you had to see that. I'm sorry I ruined dinner. But please don't leave. I don't. My voice cracked. I don't want to be alone. Janet squeezed my shoulder. We're not going anywhere. Emma spoke for the first time, her young voice tentative. Aunt Eleanor, are you going to be okay? I looked at my 16-year-old niece, at her concern and confusion, and I tried to smile. Yes, sweetheart. I'm going to be fine. I wasn't sure if I believed it, but I needed to say it. We salvaged what we could of dinner. Tom went upstairs and convinced Claire to come back down. Benjamin eventually came back inside. We sat around the table, more subdued now, the easy joy of earlier vanished, and we ate. We didn't talk about what had happened. We talked about nothing, about everything else. The weather, work, school, anything but the bomb I'd just detonated in the middle of our family. After dinner, after the dishes were done and Janet's family had finally left, after Benjamin and Claire had both retreated to their childhood bedrooms, I sat alone in my living room in the dark. My phone had been buzzing all evening. Text messages from Daniel, angry ones, then pleading ones, then angry again. I didn't read them. I'd already blocked Jessica's number after finding it in his phone months ago. But I imagined he was with her now, telling her his version of events. Painting me as the crazy wife, the vindictive bitch who'd humiliated him in front of his family. Let him. The truth was documented. The truth was filed with the court. The truth was witnessed by 12 people around a dining room table. But sitting there in the dark, I couldn't help but wonder if Patricia had been right. Had I controlled the narrative? Or had I just destroyed any chance of handling this with dignity? And then I thought about Daniel's face when I'd said I filed for divorce. The shock. The panic. The realization that he'd been caught, that his double life was over. That look had been worth everything. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Patricia. Asterisk how did it go? Asterisk. I typed back. Asterisk exactly as planned. Asterisk. Asterisk good. He'll be angry for a while. Don't engage. Don't respond to his messages. Let him stew. We'll deal with him through legal channels now. Asterisk. Asterisk okay. Asterisk. Asterisk Eleanor. You did well today. I know it doesn't feel like it. But you took your power back. Remember that. Asterisk. I set down my phone and closed my eyes. Took my power back. Was that what this was? Upstairs, I heard Claire crying through her closed door. I heard Benjamin's voice, low and soothing, talking to her. My children were suffering, and it was because of what I'd done. No. It was because of what he'd done. I had to remember that. Daniel had made the choice to cheat. Daniel had made the choice to lie. Daniel had broken our family. I just made sure everyone knew it. But as I sat there alone in the dark, listening to my daughter cry, I wondered if knowing the truth made any of us feel better. Or if it just meant we were all suffering together now, instead of me suffering alone. The days after Thanksgiving passed in a strange, suspended reality. I went to work because I didn't know what else to do. My students noticed nothing. I was still Mrs. Pritchard, still teaching, still grading papers. But my colleagues noticed. Word had gotten around somehow, the way it always does in small communities. Sympathetic looks in the hallway. A casserole left in my classroom from Margaret Torres with a note that just said thinking of you. I appreciated the kindness, but it also made everything more real. I wasn't just getting divorced. I was becoming the woman whose husband cheated. That would be my identity now, at least for a while. Benjamin left the Saturday after Thanksgiving. His flight back to Seattle couldn't come soon enough, I think. He hugged me goodbye at the airport, but it was stiff, uncomfortable. I love you, Mom, he said. But I wish you'd told me privately first. I wish I hadn't found out like that. I know, I said. I'm sorry. Are you? Sorry, I mean. I thought about it. I'm sorry you had to see it. I'm not sorry I did it. Benjamin nodded slowly. Dad called me last night. He's staying at some extended stay hotel. He wanted me to talk to you, to ask you to reconsider. That's not going to happen. I know. I told him that. Benjamin shifted his weight. His saying you blindsided him. That you never tried to work it out, never gave him a chance to explain. Rage flared in my chest. He had 3 months of chances. Every time he lied about where he was, every time he came home smelling like her perfume, every time he kissed me goodbye before going to meet her, those were all chances. He chose not to take them. I know, Mom. I know. I'm not defending him. I just... Benjamin ran his hand through his hair, a gesture so like his father it hurt to watch. This is a lot. Yes, I agreed. It is. Claire stayed through the weekend but barely spoke to me. She helped clean up from Thanksgiving, then spent most of her time in her room or out with old high school friends. Sunday night before she drove back to Charlotte, she finally confronted me in the kitchen. That was cruel, she said without preamble. What you did on Thanksgiving. That was cruel, Mom. I was loading the dishwasher. I didn't stop. Your father having an affair was cruel. I just made sure people knew about it. You humiliated him. In front of the whole family. In front of Emma and Connor, they're just kids. They're 16 and 14. Old enough to understand that actions have consequences. Is that what this is about? Consequences? Claire's voice rose. Or is it about revenge? I turned to face her. My daughter stood there with her arms crossed, her eyes red from crying, looking so much like me at her age it was startling. Maybe it's both, I said quietly. That's not who you are. You're not vindictive. You're not mean. You're my mom. You're the person who taught me to be kind, to be graceful, to take the high road. And where did the high road get me, Claire? 35 years of marriage to a man who was sleeping with someone young enough to be his daughter. You want me to be graceful about that? I want you to be you. Maybe you don't know who I am. Maybe I didn't either, until this happened. I closed the dishwasher. I spent decades being the person everyone needed me to be. The good wife. The good mother. The good teacher. I put everyone else first. And you know what I learned? It doesn't matter. People will betray you anyway. So maybe it's time I start putting myself first. Claire shook her head. I don't even recognize you right now. Good. Because the woman you recognized let herself be treated like she didn't matter. And I'm done being her. Claire left that night without saying goodbye. I heard her car pull out of the driveway around 10 p.m., and I stood at the window watching her taillights disappear, wondering if I'd just lost my daughter along with my husband. But I couldn't think about that. I couldn't let myself break down. Not yet. There was still too much to do. Monday morning, I met with Patricia again. She'd received Daniel's response to the divorce filing. He was contesting it, claiming irreconcilable differences rather than adultery, and requesting mediation. Standard playbook, Patricia said, sliding the papers across her desk. He wants to avoid the adultery finding because it affects the property split in Virginia. If the court determines the marriage ended due to his adultery, the judge can award you a larger portion of marital assets. How much larger? In cases with documented adultery, I've seen splits go as high as 60-40 or even 70-30 in favor of the wronged spouse. Plus, you'd likely be awarded attorney fees. I did the math in my head. Our house was worth $450,000. We had retirement accounts totaling over $1 million. Savings, investments, his business assets. We were looking at close to $2 million in marital property. 60% of $2 million was $1.2 million. 70% was $1.4 million. Life-changing amounts of money. Security forever amounts of money. What do we do? I asked. We fight the adultery finding. We use all the evidence you collected. Raymond's footage, the credit card statements, everything. And we make Daniel's life as difficult as legally possible until he agrees to settle on our terms. Over the next 2 weeks, Patricia did exactly that. She filed motions. She subpoenaed Daniel's business records. She sent him extensive discovery requests, hundreds of questions about his finances, his whereabouts, his relationship with Jessica. And she demanded that he move out of our shared office space in his commercial real estate company. That last one surprised me. Why his office? I asked. Because you're technically part owner. You've been married for 35 years. Under Virginia law, Any business assets acquired during the marriage are marital property. His company, his client list, his commission structure, half of that is yours. I hadn't thought about it that way. Daniel had always treated his business as his domain, his success. But Patricia was right. I'd supported that business for decades. I'd attended his networking events, hosted his colleagues, moved across town twice when he needed to be closer to his properties. I'd sacrificed promotions and opportunities in my own career because his schedule took priority. Half of his success was built on my support. So we go after the business, I said. Patricia smiled. We absolutely go after the business. Meanwhile, Daniel was calling me constantly. I'd blocked his number, so he started calling from other phones. His office, Jessica's phone, random numbers I didn't recognize. When I wouldn't answer, he started showing up at my school. The first time, I was walking to my car after a long day of teaching. It was early December, already dark at 5 p.m., and I was exhausted. I didn't see him until he stepped out from between two cars. Eleanor, please. We need to talk. I jumped, my heart hammering. You can't be here, Daniel. This is harassment. I'm not harassing you. I'm trying to save our marriage. There's nothing to save. You destroyed it. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. Are you really going to throw away 35 years because of one mistake? One mistake. As if 3 months, probably longer, of systematic lying and cheating was one mistake. As if Charleston was one mistake. As if every late night and every lie and every moment he'd spent with her while I waited at home was one mistake. Get away from me, I said, walking toward my car. He followed. Eleanor, please. I love you. I've always loved you. This thing with Jessica, it was nothing. It meant nothing. I whirled around. Then why did you do it? He stopped, taken aback. I don't know. Midlife crisis? Stupidity? She made me feel young again, and I was flattered, and it got out of hand. So it's her fault? She seduced you? You had no agency in this. That's not what I'm saying. Then what are you saying, Daniel? That you accidentally fell into bed with her? That you accidentally booked romantic weekends away? That you accidentally told her you loved her? Because yes, I saw those texts too. His face paled. You went through my phone. Damn right I did. And I'm glad I did. Because otherwise I'd still be the idiot wife who believed your lies. I never wanted to hurt you. But you did. You did hurt me. Every single day for months, you hurt me. And you only care now because you got caught. That's not true. Go home, Daniel. Or wherever you're staying. But stop coming here. Stop calling. Let the lawyers handle this. I don't want lawyers. I want my wife back. Something in his voice, the desperation, the whining tone, snapped something inside me. This was the man I'd spent 35 years with? This pathetic, caught cheater who was more concerned about losing his comfortable life than about the pain he'd caused. You should have thought of that before you fucked someone else, I said coldly, and got in my car. I drove away shaking, adrenaline flooding my system. In my rearview mirror, I could see him standing in the parking lot, watching me leave. That night, I filed a restraining order. Not a full protective order, Patricia advised against overreaching, but a civil order requiring Daniel to stay away from my workplace and to cease direct contact except through attorneys. The judge granted it. 2 days later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Mrs. Pritchard. A young woman's voice. This is Jessica Lang. My blood went cold. How did you get this number? From Daniel's phone. Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you. Every instinct screamed at me to end the call. But curiosity won. What could you possibly have to say to me? I'm sorry. Her voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I didn't know he was married when we started. He told me he was divorced. He said you'd been separated for a year. I swear, I didn't know. I laughed bitterly. And when did you find out the truth? Silence. When? I demanded. About a month ago, she whispered. I saw his Facebook profile, and you were in his photos. Recent photos. Family photos from last Christmas. And I confronted him, and he admitted it. And yet you still went to Charleston with him. I know that was wrong. But he said he was going to leave you. He said he was just waiting for the right time, that he didn't want to hurt you during the holidays. The same lies men have told mistresses since the beginning of time. And she'd believed them. Let me give you some free advice, Jessica. If a man cheats with you, he'll cheat on you. You're not special. You're not different. You're just younger. And when you're 57 and he's almost 90, and some new 28-year-old makes him feel young again, he'll do the exact same thing to you. Mrs. Pritchard. Don't call me again. I hung up. My hands were shaking. I sat down on my couch and I cried, the first real crying I'd allowed myself since Thanksgiving. Great, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Part of me had wondered if Jessica was some evil seductress, some calculating homewrecker who'd targeted Daniel deliberately. It would have been easier to hate her if she was. But she was just young and naive and stupid. She'd believed his lies because she'd wanted to believe them. And somehow that made it worse. Because it meant Daniel had betrayed us both. He'd lied to me, and he'd lied to her. He'd built an entire fantasy where he was the victim of an unhappy marriage, and we were both just supporting characters in his story. That night, I opened my laptop and started writing. Not lesson plans, not essays. A journal. My story, in my words. Everything that had happened, everything I'd felt. I wrote until 2 a.m, until my eyes burned and my wrists ached. And when I finally stopped, I realized something. I wasn't just surviving this. I was documenting it. And maybe, someday, my story would help someone else. Some other woman who felt invisible, who felt like she didn't matter, who needed to know that it was okay to fight back. That it was okay to refuse to be silent. That it was okay to choose yourself, even when everyone said you were being cruel. Because the crueler thing would have been to keep pretending. To keep smiling. To keep letting Daniel have his cake and eat it too. I saved the document, backed it up to 3 different places, and went to bed. Tomorrow, Patricia said, we'd receive Daniel's financial disclosures. Tomorrow, we'd start seeing exactly what our marriage was worth in dollars and cents. Tomorrow, the real battle would begin. But tonight, I'd already won something more important. I'd won myself back. December brought cold rain and the crushing weight of discovery. Patricia's subpoenas had done their job. Boxes and boxes of financial records arrived at her office. Bank statements, tax returns, business ledgers going back years. She hired a forensic accountant to comb through everything, looking for hidden assets, undisclosed income, anything Daniel might be trying to keep off the books. What they found was damning. He's been moving money, Patricia told me in mid-December, spreading printouts across her conference table. Look here. Transfers to an account we didn't know about. Regular deposits, always under $10,000 to avoid triggering IRS reporting requirements. He's been doing this for at least 2 years. 2 years. My stomach dropped. His affair has been going on for 2 years. I don't know about the affair, but the financial deception certainly has. This account, she tapped one statement, has over $150,000 in it. Money that should have been disclosed as marital assets. $150,000. Hidden. I thought about all the times I'd worried about our retirement, about whether we were saving enough. All the times I'd clipped coupons and looked for sales and put off buying things I needed because I was trying to be responsible. And he'd had a secret account with $150,000 in it. What else? I asked, my voice flat. Patricia hesitated. There are credit cards we didn't know about. Store cards, mostly. Nordstrom, Tiffany, designer boutiques. All paid off every month from that hidden account, so they never showed up on our joint statements. The forensic accountant estimates he's spent about $40,000 on these cards in the past year alone. $40,000 on jewelry and clothing that I'd never seen. On gifts for Jessica, presumably. While I was wearing the same winter coat I'd bought 6 years ago. I want to destroy him, I said quietly. Patricia looked at me steadily. Then let's destroy him. The next week, we filed amended divorce papers. We listed the hidden account. We attached evidence of the secret credit cards. We demonstrated a pattern of financial deception and requested a hearing to freeze all of Daniel's assets pending full disclosure. The judge granted it. Just before Christmas, Daniel found himself unable to access his business accounts, his personal accounts, anything. He could make minimum necessary living expenses, but every dollar had to be documented and approved by the court. He was furious. His lawyer, a slick guy named Richard Preston who wore expensive suits and had the moral flexibility of a politician, filed an emergency motion claiming we were being vindictive, that we were trying to destroy Daniel's business out of spite. The judge denied the motion. Patricia was triumphant. This is exactly what we needed. Now he's backed into a corner. He can either come clean about everything, or he can continue lying and face sanctions. Either way, we win. Christmas came and went. Neither Benjamin nor Claire came home. Benjamin claimed he had to work. Claire said she was spending the holiday with friends. I knew the truth. They didn't want to choose between their parents. It was easier to avoid us both. I spent Christmas alone in the house, grading papers and drinking wine and trying not to think about all the Christmases before. The year Benjamin learned to ride his bike. The year Claire played Mary in the church nativity scene. The year Daniel and I stayed up until 3 a.m. assembling a dollhouse. All those memories felt like they belonged to a different woman. A woman who didn't exist anymore. My phone rang on Christmas afternoon. Janet, calling from Maryland. "How are you holding up?" she asked. "I'm fine." "You're alone on Christmas. You're not fine." I smiled despite myself. "Okay, I'm not fine. But I'm managing." "Tom and I were talking. Why don't you come up here for New Year's? Get out of Richmond for a bit, get some distance." I considered it. But I had meetings with Patricia scheduled. I had documents to review. I had a war to win. "I can't," I said. "But thank you." "Eleanor, you can't let this consume you. You can't let him take everything." "I'm not. I'm taking everything from him." Janet sighed. "That's what worries me." We talked for a while longer, then said our goodbyes. After we hung up, I sat in my empty living room and wondered if Janet was right. Was I letting this consume me? Was I becoming someone unrecognizable? Someone defined entirely by revenge? But then I thought about Daniel hiding $150,000. I thought about him spending $40,000 on his mistress while I worried about our retirement. I thought about 35 years of my life built on lies. And I decided I didn't care if revenge was consuming me. At least I was feeling something. At least I was fighting back. At least I was alive. Early January brought a new development. Daniel's lawyer requested a settlement conference, a mediation session where both parties would try to reach an agreement without going to trial. Patricia advised me to accept. "It doesn't mean we're giving in," she explained. "It just means we're willing to hear what they have to offer. And trust me, after the asset freeze and the hidden account discoveries, they're going to want to settle. A trial would destroy what's left of his reputation." The mediation was scheduled for January 15th at a neutral office downtown. Patricia prepped me extensively. "Don't let him bait you. Don't show emotion. Let me do the talking. Just sit there and look calm and collected." But she hadn't prepared me for what happened. We arrived at the mediation office at 9 a.m. It was a cold Tuesday morning, the kind where your breath fogs in the air. The office was generic, beige walls, conference tables, bad coffee in the lobby. Richard Preston was already there with Daniel. I hadn't seen Daniel since Thanksgiving. He looked terrible. He'd lost weight, and not in a good way. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed. He'd aged 10 years in 6 weeks. Good. We were led into separate conference rooms. That's how mediation works, you don't sit in the same room. The mediator, a thin woman named Dr. Susan Wright, explained the process. She'd go back and forth between rooms, carrying offers and counter-offers, trying to find common ground. "Remember," Patricia whispered as Dr. Wright left to get Daniel's opening position, "this is just the beginning. Whatever they offer first will be insulting. Don't react." Dr. Wright returned 15 minutes later. "Mr. Pritchard is proposing a 50-50 split of all marital assets. He's willing to stipulate to irreconcilable differences rather than contest the adultery finding, provided you agree not to pursue claims on his future business earnings. He'll pay spousal support for 5 years at $2,000 per month." Patricia didn't even wait for me to respond. "Absolutely not. We have documented adultery. We have hidden assets. We have evidence of financial deception spanning years. A 50-50 split isn't just insulting, it's absurd. We're countering with 70-30 in Eleanor's favor, lifetime spousal support at $4,000 per month, and full claim to half his business interests including future earnings. Dr. Wright nodded and left. We waited. 20 minutes later, she returned. Mr. Pritchard says 70-30 is punitive and excessive. He's willing to go 60-40 and increase spousal support to $3,000 per month for 10 years, but that's his final offer. Patricia looked at me. I nodded. Not acceptable, Patricia said. Our position stands. And tell Mr. Pritchard that if we can't reach an agreement today, we'll be pursuing a full trial, which means his affair will be a matter of public record. Every client, every colleague, every potential business partner will be able to read about his deception. Is that really what he wants? This time when Dr. Wright left, she was gone for almost an hour. Patricia and I sat in silence. I could hear muffled voices from down the hall. Daniel and his lawyer arguing, probably. Finally, Dr. Wright returned. She looked exhausted. Mr. Pritchard would like to speak with you directly, Mrs. Pritchard. Just for a moment. His attorney and yours would be present, of course. Patricia immediately shook her head. That's not advisable. I'll do it, I said. Eleanor. I'll do it, I repeated. I want to hear what he has to say. Patricia frowned but nodded. We followed Dr. Wright down the hall to the other conference room. Daniel sat at the far end of the table, Richard Preston beside him. Daniel stood when I entered. Eleanor, thank you for agreeing to this. I said nothing. I took the seat Patricia pulled out for me and folded my hands on the table. Daniel sat back down. He looked at Richard, who gave a small nod. Then Daniel looked at me. I know I hurt you, he began. I know what I did was unforgivable. But Eleanor, please. You're trying to take everything. My business, my livelihood. I'll have nothing left. You should have thought of that before. I made a mistake. One mistake in 35 years. Doesn't that count for something? 3 months isn't one mistake, Daniel. 2 years of hiding money isn't one mistake. And even if it was, why should I care about your business? You never cared about my career. How many times did I turn down opportunities because you needed me to be available? How many times did I sacrifice my ambitions for yours? That's not fair. None of this is fair. That's the point. Daniel leaned forward. His voice dropped, intimate in a way that made my skin crawl. Eleanor. We built a life together. We have children together. We have grandchildren. Are you really going to destroy all of that over this? And then he said it. So quietly that Patricia and Richard almost didn't hear. So quietly that it was clearly meant just for me. He whispered, "You're a burden." The room froze. I stared at him. What did you say? Daniel's eyes widened. He realized his mistake immediately. I didn't mean. What did you just say to me? My voice was still calm, but something dangerous was coiling in my chest. Eleanor, I was just trying to explain. You just called me a burden. After 35 years. After raising your children and supporting your career and standing by you through everything. I'm a burden. Patricia's hand was on my arm, but I shook it off. I leaned forward, matching Daniel's posture. Let me tell you what a burden is, Daniel. A burden is the woman who gave up her dreams so you could chase yours. A burden is the woman who kept your house and raised your children and made you look good to everyone who mattered. A burden is the woman whose labor and sacrifice and support built the life you're so desperate to keep. And you know what? You're right. I am a burden. I'm the burden of your conscience. The burden of your guilt. The burden of everything you're finally being forced to acknowledge. I stood up. Patricia stood with me. We're done here, I said. No settlement. We're going to trial. And when we do, everyone, every client, every colleague, every person you've ever done business with, will know exactly what kind of man you are. They'll know you cheated. They'll know you lied. They'll know you hid money from your wife of 35 years. And they'll know that you called her a burden. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. One more thing. When we're done, when you've lost everything you're so worried about losing, remember this moment. Remember that you did this to yourself. Because all you had to do was be faithful. All you had to do was be honest. All you had to do was treat me like I mattered. I walked out. Patricia followed, gathering her briefcase as she went. Behind us, I heard Daniel's voice, plaintive and desperate. Eleanor, please. But I was already gone. In the hallway, my hands were shaking with adrenaline. Patricia looked at me with something like awe. That, she said quietly, was perfect. His own lawyer heard him call you a burden. That's going in our trial brief. Eleanor, you just handed us the trial on a silver platter. I didn't plan that. I know. That's what makes it perfect. Patricia grinned. Your husband just destroyed his own case with 2 words. You're a burden. The judge is going to crucify him. We walked out of the building into the cold January air. I stopped on the sidewalk and took a deep breath. My heart was pounding. My whole body felt electric. What happens now? I asked. Patricia checked her watch. Now we file a motion to record that statement as evidence of emotional cruelty and financial control. Now we prepare for trial. And now, Eleanor, we make sure every word of what just happened gets documented. Because that wasn't just an insult, that was a window into how he really sees you. And a jury will see it too. We walked to her car. I felt weightless, untethered. Something had shifted in that room. I'd seen Daniel's mask slip completely. The charming, successful businessman was gone. What remained was a bitter, entitled man who resented me for daring to fight back. You're a burden. Those 2 words would haunt him. I'd make sure of it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment. The way his face had changed. The venom in his whisper. He'd meant for only me to hear it, meant for it to cut me privately the way he'd cut me for months with his betrayal. But he'd miscalculated. Because I wasn't the same woman anymore. I wasn't the woman who absorbed insults silently. I wasn't the woman who protected his image at the expense of my dignity. I was the woman who had walked out of that room with her head high. The woman who had turned his cruelty into ammunition. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Asterisk I heard what happened at mediation. That took guts. Raymond asterisk. Raymond Cole, the private investigator. I smiled despite myself. Word traveled fast in legal circles, apparently. I typed back, asterisk thank you. For everything. Asterisk. Asterisk you're going to win this. I've seen a lot of divorces. You're going to win. Asterisk. I hoped he was right. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Patricia filed motion after motion, each one building our case. She submitted the recording equipment agreement from the mediation, standard practice. The session had been recorded for documentation purposes, and requested the specific segment where Daniel had called me a burden. Richard Preston fought it, claiming it was taken out of context, that Daniel had been under extreme stress. The judge reviewed the recording in chambers and ruled in our favor. The statement was admissible. We were also granted access to more of Daniel's business records. What we found was staggering. The hidden account wasn't the only one. There was a second account, this one opened just 8 months ago, with another $75,000. And there were business expenses that didn't add up, claimed deductions for client dinners that our credit card records showed never happened, at least not with me present. He'd been cheating on his taxes too. Using fake expenses to reduce his tax burden, then pocketing the difference. Patricia immediately flagged it for the IRS. That was a separate matter from our divorce, but it was leverage. If Daniel wanted to avoid a federal audit, he'd need to settle on our terms. The pressure was working. I could tell because Daniel started getting desperate. He showed up at my school again despite the restraining order. The principal called the police, and Daniel was escorted off property and warned that another violation would result in arrest. He sent emails through mutual friends, begging them to intercede on his behalf. He even called my sister Janet, sobbing on the phone about how I was destroying him, how I turned his children against him. Janet, bless her, told him exactly what he could do with his self-pity and hung up. Benjamin called me in late January. His voice was strained. Mom, Dad's not doing well. He called me last night at 2 a.m., drunk, saying he'd lost everything. He hasn't lost anything yet. We're still in negotiation. He said you called him a monster at the mediation. I didn't. I said he called me a burden, which he did. There's a recording. Benjamin was quiet for a long moment. Did he really say that? Yes. Another silence. Then, Jesus, Mom. I'm sorry. I didn't know it was this bad. It's bad, Benjamin. And I'm not backing down. I know you love your father. I'm not asking you to stop. but I need you to understand why I'm doing this. I think I'm starting to, he said quietly. Claire told me about the hidden accounts. About the money he spent on Jessica. I didn't want to believe it at first, but it's true. All of it. Yeah. I heard him take a shaky breath. I don't know how to process this. My whole life, I thought you guys were solid. I thought we were this perfect family. We weren't perfect. We never were. But I thought we were real. Turns out I was wrong. For what it's worth, Mom, I'm proud of you. For fighting. I was angry at Thanksgiving, but I get it now. You did what you had to do. Those words broke something open in my chest. I'd been so afraid I'd lost my son's respect, his love. Hearing that he understood, that he supported me, it meant everything. Thank you, I whispered. I love you, Mom. I love you too. After we hung up, I allowed myself a moment of pure relief. My son was on my side. Not against his father, exactly, but on my side. That was enough. Claire called 2 days later with similar sentiments. She'd spoken with Benjamin, and she'd done her own digging. She'd found Daniel's Instagram account, the one he'd thought was private, and seen photos of him with Jessica. Photos from before Charleston. Photos from last spring, almost a year ago. The affair had been going on longer than I'd known. Maybe longer than even the 2 years the financial records suggested. I'm sorry, Mom, Claire said, her voice thick with tears. I'm sorry I made you feel like you were wrong to be angry. I'm sorry I didn't believe you right away. You were protecting your father. I understand that. No, I was protecting an idea. The idea of what I thought our family was. But that wasn't real, was it? I don't know, honey. Some of it was real. Your childhood was real. The love I have for you and Benjamin, that's real. But your father and me, I don't think it was real for a long time. Maybe ever. That's so sad. Yes, I agreed. It is. But sad wasn't the same as wrong. Sad wasn't the same as defeated. I could be sad and still be right. I could mourn what I'd lost while still fighting for what I deserved. In February, we got our trial date, March 28th. 6 weeks to prepare. Patricia kicked into high gear, prepping witnesses, organizing evidence, rehearsing my testimony. She warned me that Daniel's lawyer would try to paint me as vindictive, as a woman scorned who was trying to punish her husband financially out of spite. Let them try, I said. The evidence speaks for itself. It does. But you need to speak for yourself too. You need to tell your story. Not angry, not bitter, just honest. Tell the judge what your marriage was like. What you sacrificed. What you built. And then tell them what it felt like to discover it was all a lie. I practiced my testimony at home, speaking to empty rooms. I told the story of 35 years to my kitchen walls. To my bathroom mirror. To the framed photos of my children that still lined the hallway. And I learned something in those rehearsals. My story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival. About rediscovering yourself after someone tries to erase you. About refusing to disappear just because someone decided you didn't matter anymore. By the time March arrived, I was ready. The courthouse was a historic building in downtown Richmond, all columns and marble. Patricia met me on the steps that morning. I dressed carefully, a navy suit, modest jewelry, my hair pulled back in a simple bun. I wanted to look professional, composed, unshakable. Remember, Patricia said as we walked up the steps. Tell the truth. Don't embellish. Don't editorialize. Just tell your truth and let it speak for itself. I will. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Wood paneling, a judge's bench, rows of seats for spectators. Daniel was already there with Richard Preston. He didn't look at me as I entered. The judge, a woman named Carolyn Burke, took the bench at 9 a.m. sharp. She was in her 60s, with steel grey hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Are we ready to proceed? She asked. Yes, Your Honor, Patricia said. Yes, Your Honor, Richard echoed. And so it began. Patricia laid out our case methodically. The timeline of the affair. The hidden accounts. The secret credit cards. The falsified business expenses. Raymond Cole testified about the surveillance, showing the photos and videos from Charleston and other locations. The forensic accountant testified about the financial deception, walking through spreadsheets and bank statements with clinical precision. Daniel sat stone-faced through all of it, occasionally whispering to Richard. Then it was time for me to testify. Patricia called me to the stand. I was sworn in, my hand on the Bible, promising to tell the truth. As if I'd ever do anything else now. Patricia started with the basics. How we met. When we married. Our life together. I spoke clearly, steadily, answering each question without emotion. Then she asked, Mrs. Pritchard, when did you first suspect your husband was having an affair? I took a breath. Early September. He'd been distant for a while, but that's when I really noticed. The late nights. The phone calls. The smell of perfume that wasn't mine. What did you do? At first, nothing. I told myself I was imagining things. But then one morning, he left his phone on the counter while he showered. I looked through it. That's when I found the messages with Jessica Lang. How did that make you feel? Objection, Richard called. Relevance. Your Honor, the emotional impact of the adultery is relevant to the property division, Patricia argued. Judge Burke nodded. Overruled. The witness may answer. I looked at the judge, then at the courtroom. It made me feel invisible. Like 35 years of my life didn't matter. Like I didn't matter. Patricia continued questioning me for another hour. She asked about my career sacrifices. About the times I'd turned down promotions because Daniel's schedule took priority. About the family events I'd organized, the networking dinners I'd hosted, the support I'd provided. Then she asked about the mediation. Mrs. Pritchard, can you tell the court what happened at the January 15th settlement conference? I described the day. The conference rooms. The back-and-forth negotiations. And then the moment when Daniel had asked to speak to me directly. We were discussing the property division. He was upset, saying I was trying to take everything. And then he leaned forward and said something very quietly. What did he say? I looked directly at Daniel as I spoke. He called me a burden. A murmur went through the courtroom. Daniel's face flushed red. Can you elaborate on the context? Patricia asked. He was trying to convince me to accept a lower settlement. He said we'd built a life together, that we had children and grandchildren. Then he asked if I was really going to destroy all of that over this. I paused. That's when he whispered, "You're a burden." How did that make you feel? Like I'd wasted my life on someone who'd never valued me, who saw everything I'd done, raising his children, supporting his career, building our home, as a burden rather than a gift. Patricia let that sit for a moment. Then, no further questions, Your Honor. It was Richard Preston's turn. He stood, buttoning his suit jacket, his expression sympathetic. Mrs. Pritchard, I'm sorry for what you've gone through. Truly. But isn't it possible you're being somewhat vindictive in your demands? A 70-30 split, lifetime support. Aren't you trying to punish my client rather than seeking a fair division? No, I said simply. No. He raised his eyebrows. You don't think demanding 70% of marital assets is punitive? I think it's fair compensation for 35 years of unpaid labor. For every dinner I cooked, every client I entertained, every move I made to accommodate his career. I think it's fair compensation for the emotional devastation of discovering my marriage was a lie. And I think it's fair restitution for the money he hid from me, the money he spent on his mistress, and the future earnings he built on my support. Richard's smile faltered. Mrs. Pritchard, isn't it true that you never actually spoke to your husband about your suspicions before filing for divorce? That you never gave him a chance to end the affair and save the marriage? Why would I do that? I'm sorry. Why would I give him a chance to lie to me more? He'd been lying for months, maybe years. Why would confronting him have changed anything? Because marriages are about communication, Mrs. Pritchard. About working through problems. You unilaterally decided to end the marriage without. He unilaterally decided to end it when he slept with someone else. My voice was sharp. I just filed the paperwork. Judge Burke made a note. Richard asked a few more questions, trying to paint me as calculating and cold. But I wouldn't take the bait. I answered every question honestly, clearly, without anger. Finally, he said, "No further questions." I stepped down from the stand. Patricia gave me a small nod. I'd done well. The trial continued for 2 more days. Daniel testified, claiming the affair was a mistake, that he'd been going through a difficult time, that he'd never meant to hurt me. He claimed the hidden accounts were for retirement planning, that he'd been trying to surprise me. The forensic accountant destroyed that testimony in minutes, showing that the accounts had been used primarily for personal expenses, many of them at jewelry stores and restaurants. Jessica was subpoenaed to testify. She looked terrified on the stand, young and out of her depth. She confirmed the affair, confirmed the gifts Daniel had given her, confirmed the trips. Under cross-examination from Patricia, she admitted Daniel had told her he was separated when they first met, but that she'd learned the truth months ago and continued the relationship anyway. By the time the trial ended on March 30th, I felt drained but vindicated. Judge Burke said she'd review all the evidence and issue a ruling within 2 weeks. We left the courthouse together, Patricia and I. The early spring air was cool and fresh. Across the street, I could see Daniel with Richard, both of them looking defeated. "How do you think it went?" I asked Patricia. She smiled. "I think we're about to make legal history in Virginia property division law." 2 weeks later, the ruling came. Judge Burke had awarded me 68% of marital assets. Lifetime spousal support at $4,500 per month. Full claim to half of Daniel's business interests, including a percentage of future earnings. Attorney fees to be paid by Daniel. And a formal finding that the marriage had ended due to Daniel's adultery and financial deception. In dollar terms, I was getting $1.36 million in assets, plus the monthly support, plus future business earnings. Daniel was financially devastated. He'd keep his business, but he'd be paying me from it for the rest of his life. He'd keep some savings, but not enough to live the comfortable lifestyle he'd grown accustomed to. And everyone would know why. The trial was public record. Anyone who Googled his name would find it. Patricia called me with the news. I was in my classroom after school, grading essays, when my phone rang. "We won," she said simply. "We won everything." I should have felt triumphant, victorious, vindicated. Instead, I felt empty. "Eleanor, you there?" "Yeah," I said. "I'm here. Thank you, Patricia, for everything." "You're welcome. You earned this. Remember that." After we hung up, I sat in my empty classroom surrounded by student desks and poster boards and the accumulated debris of 30 years of teaching. I'd won. I'd destroyed Daniel exactly as I'd set out to do. So why did it feel like I'd lost something too? The ruling was final in mid-April. Daniel had 30 days to begin asset transfers and spousal support payments. Patricia handled all the logistics. I didn't have to speak to him, didn't have to see him. Everything went through lawyers. But the fallout was immediate and brutal. Daniel's business took a massive hit. Word spread quickly in the Richmond commercial real estate community. Not just about the divorce, but about the hidden accounts, the falsified expenses, the financial deception. Clients started pulling out. Deals fell through. His professional reputation, built over decades, crumbled in weeks. Part of me felt guilty about that. Part of me wondered if I'd gone too far. But then I'd remember, "You're a burden." And the guilt would evaporate. I received the first spousal support payment on April 15th. $4,500 deposited directly into my account. More money than I'd ever had autonomy over in my entire marriage. Money that was mine, that I didn't have to justify or explain. I sat staring at my bank balance, and for the first time in months, I cried from relief rather than pain. My students noticed the change in me. I was lighter somehow, less burdened. Mrs. Torres commented on it one day in the teacher's lounge. "Whatever's been weighing on you seems better," she said. "You look like yourself again." Did I? I wasn't sure I knew who myself was anymore. The woman I'd been before, Eleanor Pritchard, devoted wife and mother, was gone. The woman I'd become during the divorce, Eleanor Pritchard, warrior and destroyer, was no longer needed. So who was I now? In May, I made a decision. I put the house on the market. It was too big for one person. Too full of memories. Every room reminded me of something. Benjamin's first steps in the living room, Claire's high school graduation party in the backyard, 35 years of Christmases and birthdays and ordinary days that hadn't been ordinary at all because I'd thought they mattered. Maybe they had mattered. Maybe they still did. But I couldn't live in that museum of my old life anymore. The house sold in 3 weeks for $20,000 over asking. The market was hot. Young families were desperate for suburban homes with good school districts. I hoped whoever bought it would be happier there than I'd been. With my share of the house sale and the asset division, I had nearly $900,000 in liquid assets. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life if I was careful. I wasn't interested in being careful anymore. In June, I resigned from teaching. I'd been planning to work another 5 years until retirement, but suddenly I couldn't imagine spending another day in that classroom. 30 years was enough. I'd given enough. The principal tried to talk me out of it, citing my tenure and my pension. But I'd done the math with a financial advisor. Between my pension, Social Security, the spousal support, and my investments, I'd be more than comfortable. Money, it turned out, really did buy freedom. My last day of teaching was June 10th. My students gave me cards and flowers. My colleagues threw me a small party in the lounge. Everyone said how much they'd miss me, how I'd been such an inspiration. I smiled and thanked them and felt like a fraud. Because the truth was, I'd been sleepwalking through my career for years. Teaching had become automatic, mechanical. I'd lost my passion for it somewhere along the way, probably around the same time I'd lost myself. Benjamin flew in from Seattle for my retirement party. Claire drove up from Charlotte. We had dinner together at a nice Italian restaurant, not Stella's. I couldn't stomach going there, and for the first time in months, we felt like a family again. What are you going to do now? Claire asked over dessert. I don't know, I admitted. Travel, maybe. I've always wanted to see Charleston. The irony wasn't lost on any of us. Benjamin laughed. Well, at least now you can go without Dad. That's the point, I said. After dinner, as we walked to our cars, Benjamin pulled me aside. Have you talked to Dad recently? No. Why? He's not doing well, Mom. Financially, emotionally. He's living in a 1-bedroom apartment in the West End. His business is basically dead. He had to lay off his whole staff. That's unfortunate, I said neutrally. Benjamin studied my face. Do you feel bad about it? At all? I thought about it honestly. No, I said finally. Not really. Should I? I don't know. He's still my father. And despite everything, he's still a human being. A human being who called me a burden. Who lied to me for years. Who stole from our marriage to fund his affair. You want me to feel sorry for him? I'm not saying that. I guess I'm worried about you, Mom. You won. You got everything you wanted. But you don't seem happy. He was right. I'd won, but I wasn't happy. Because winning had required me to become someone I didn't entirely recognize. Someone hard and calculating and ruthless. Someone strong. Yes. But at what cost? I'm not unhappy, I said carefully. I'm just adjusting to this new life. This new version of myself. Benjamin hugged me. I love you, Mom. Whatever version you are. That night, alone in the temporary apartment I was renting while I figured out my next move, I pulled out the journal I'd started months ago. I read through entries from the beginning. The fear, the rage, the meticulous planning. The woman who'd written those entries felt like a stranger. But she'd gotten me here. To freedom. To independence. To a life that was wholly mine. I started a new entry. Asterisk June the 10th. Last day of teaching. Last day of being the old Eleanor. I should feel triumphant, but mostly I just feel tired. Daniel is suffering. The kids tell me he's living in poverty now, which feels like an exaggeration, but he's certainly not living well. Part of me thinks I should feel guilty. The other part remembers Charleston. Remembers you're a burden. Remembers 35 years of putting him first while he was planning his exit. Asterisk. Asterisk. So no, I don't feel guilty. But I don't feel victorious either. I just feel free. And maybe that's enough. Asterisk. In July, Janet convinced me to visit her in Maryland. I spent a week with her and Tom, helping with their garden, playing with their kids, existing in the simple rhythm of someone else's happy marriage. One evening, Janet and I sat on her back deck with wine, watching fireflies blink in the gathering dusk. Do you regret it? She asked. Any of it? Which part? The way you handled it. The public revelation. The courtroom battle. All of it. I swirled my wine, thinking, I regret that it happened at all. I regret that Daniel destroyed our marriage. But do I regret fighting back? No. Even knowing it cost you your relationship with him? That it hurt your kids? The kids are fine. They're hurt, but they'll heal. And as for my relationship with Daniel, I laughed bitterly. There was no relationship. That's what I finally understood. There was an arrangement. A transaction. I provided support and stability and he provided, what? Financial security? A certain lifestyle? It wasn't a marriage. Not really. Still. 35 years. 35 years I'll never get back. But at least now I have a chance at a real life. An honest life. However many years I have left, they're mine. Janet raised her glass. To new chapters. To new chapters, I echoed. In August, I finally made it to Charleston. I booked a room at the Harborview Inn, the same hotel where Daniel and Jessica had stayed. Patricia thought I was crazy when I told her. Why would you do that to yourself? She asked. Because I'm reclaiming it, I said. He took this city from me. He took our planned anniversary trip and gave it to her. So I'm taking it back. The hotel was beautiful, historic, elegant, with views of the harbor that took my breath away. I spent 3 days walking the historic district, eating at nice restaurants, browsing bookstores and art galleries. I did everything Daniel and Jessica had probably done, but I did it alone. On my terms. And it felt like victory. On my last evening, I walked along the Battery as the sun set over the water. Couples strolled hand in hand. Families took photos. Tourists pointed at the historic homes. I stood alone at the railing, watching the light fade, and I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. The woman who'd found those text messages and felt her world crumble. The woman who'd been too afraid to leave, too proud to stay, too broken to know which direction to go. That woman was gone. She'd been destroyed in the same fire that had destroyed my marriage. And from those ashes, someone new had emerged. Someone stronger. Someone free. But also someone lonely. I pulled out my phone and called Claire. Hey, Mom, she answered. What's up? Nothing. I just wanted to hear your voice. Where are you? It sounds windy. Charleston. I'm at the Battery, watching the sunset. Claire was quiet for a moment. You okay? Yeah, I said. And I meant it. Yeah, I'm okay. Good. You deserve to be okay, Mom. After we hung up, I stayed at the railing until the sky went dark and the stars came out. Then I walked back to the Harborview Inn, climbed into the comfortable bed, and slept dreamlessly. The next morning, I checked out and drove home to Richmond. To my temporary apartment and my temporary life and my uncertain future. But it was my future. That was what mattered. In September, almost a year after I'd first discovered the affair, I received an unexpected email. From Jessica Lang. Asterisk Mrs. Pritchard, asterisk. Asterisk I know I have no right to contact you. I know you probably never want to hear from me again. But I needed to tell you something. Asterisk. Asterisk Daniel and I broke up. Actually, I broke up with him. After the trial, after everything came out, I finally understood what kind of person he was. You were right when you told me that if he'd cheat with me, he'd cheat on me. He was already looking for someone new before I ended it. Asterisk. Asterisk I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly sorry. You didn't deserve what we did to you. And I didn't deserve the grace you showed me during all of this. Asterisk. Asterisk I hope you're happy now. I hope you're living the life you deserve. Asterisk. Asterisk Jessica asterisk. I read the email 3 times. Then I deleted it without responding. Some things didn't require a response. Some apologies couldn't undo the damage. Jessica would have to live with what she'd done, just like I had to live with what I'd done. We'd all have to find our own ways forward. October brought my birthday, 58. Benjamin and Claire both called, both sent gifts. Janet sent flowers. Patricia sent a card that said to new beginnings. I spent the day alone, which should have felt sad but didn't. I went to a nice lunch. I bought myself an expensive necklace I'd always wanted. I sat in a park and read a book. And I realized something, I was okay being alone. Maybe for the first time in my adult life, I was genuinely okay with my own company. I didn't need someone else to complete me or validate me or give my life meaning. I was enough on my own. That realization felt like the real victory. Not the money, not the courtroom win, not Daniel's downfall. This peace with myself, was the prize I'd been fighting for all along. That evening, I updated my journal one last time. October the 15th. 58 years old. A year ago, I was still pretending my marriage was fine. Still playing the dutiful wife. Still invisible. Now I'm visible. To myself, if no one else. And that's enough. I don't know what comes next. Maybe I'll travel more. Maybe I'll start painting again, something I gave up decades ago. Maybe I'll volunteer, or write, or do nothing at all. The point is, it's my choice. Every day from now on is my choice. And I finally understand what freedom really means. It means not needing anyone's permission to exist. Not needing anyone's approval to matter. Just existing, fully and completely, as yourself. That's what I fought for. And that's what I won. I closed the journal and put it away. My story wasn't over. I had decades left, hopefully, to write new chapters. But this chapter, the one defined by betrayal and revenge and rebirth, was finally complete. And I was ready for whatever came next. November brought rain and falling leaves and an unexpected knock on my apartment door. I'd settled into a routine by then. Morning walks. Afternoons reading or exploring Richmond's museums and cafes. Evenings cooking elaborate meals just for myself, experimenting with recipes I'd never had time for when I was teaching and maintaining a household and being a wife. I was learning who I was without anyone else to define me. It was harder than I'd expected, and more liberating. The knock came on a Tuesday afternoon. I wasn't expecting anyone. Benjamin and Claire both called before visiting now, respectful of my space and my independence in a way they hadn't been before. I opened the door to find Daniel standing in the hallway. He looked worse than I'd imagined. Thinner, older, wearing jeans and a worn jacket I didn't recognize. His face was haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. He'd aged 20 years in the 12 months since I'd filed for divorce. "Eleanor," he said. "Please. I need to talk to you." Every instinct screamed at me to slam the door. But curiosity, and maybe something else, some remnant of the woman who'd loved him once, made me hesitate. "How did you find me?" "Benjamin." I told him it was an emergency. I told him I just needed 5 minutes. I'd have words with Benjamin later about boundaries. But for now, I stepped aside and let Daniel in. My apartment was small, a one-bedroom in a nice complex near Carytown. Temporary, I kept telling myself, though I'd been there 6 months. It was nothing like our house had been. Nothing like the life we'd built together. Daniel stood awkwardly in my living room, looking around at my minimalist furniture and small kitchen. "This is nice," he said. "Cozy." "What do you want, Daniel?" He turned to face me. I wanted to apologize. Properly. Not through lawyers, not through the kids. Face to face. "You could have done that a year ago." "I know. I should have. I should have done a lot of things differently." He ran his hand through his hair, still that familiar gesture, though his hair was grayer now, thinner. "I fucked up, Eleanor. Completely. And I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it anyway." I crossed my arms. "Okay. You've said it. Is that all?" "No. I wanted you to know that you were right. About everything." The affair was longer than I admitted, almost 3 years. There were others before Jessica too. Not serious, just moments of weakness. Stupid mistakes. 3 years. Multiple affairs. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I'm in therapy. Court-ordered, actually, part of a deal to avoid fraud charges on the tax stuff. And my therapist says I need to take accountability. To face what I did without excuses or minimizing." He laughed bitterly. "So here I am. Taking accountability. How noble of you. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even expect you to believe that I'm sorry. But I am. Eleanor, I'm sorry for every lie, every betrayal, every moment I made you feel invisible. You deserved better. You deserved so much better than me." I studied his face, looking for manipulation, for angles. But all I saw was exhaustion and regret. Genuine regret, maybe, or maybe just regret that he'd been caught. I didn't know anymore. I didn't trust myself to read him. "Thank you for the apology," I said finally. "But it doesn't change anything." "I know. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not trying to get back together or reduce my payments or anything like that. I just—" He trailed off. "I just needed you to know that I see it now. What I did to you. What I took from you. And I'm sorry." We stood there in silence for a long moment. I thought about all the nights I'd lain awake imagining this conversation, imagining him groveling and begging and admitting I was right. In my fantasies, it had felt victorious. In reality, it just felt sad. "Is that everything?" I asked. "Just one more thing. The 'you're a burden' comment, I need you to know that was the worst thing I've ever said to anyone. It wasn't true. It was never true. You were never a burden, Eleanor. You were the reason I had any success at all. You were the reason our children turned out so well. You were the foundation of everything good in my life, and I was too stupid and selfish to see it." My throat tightened. I'd waited a year to hear those words. Why did they feel empty now? "Thank you for saying that," I managed. Daniel nodded. "I'll go now. Thank you for letting me say what I needed to say." He turned toward the door, then stopped. "One last thing. You won. Completely. And you should have. I want you to know I'm not fighting the support payments, I'm not trying to get out of the settlement, I'm not doing any of the shady shit my lawyer suggested. You earned every cent of what you got. And I hope you're happy, Eleanor. I genuinely hope you build a life that makes you happy." He left then, closing the door quietly behind him. I stood in my small living room, listening to his footsteps fade down the hallway, and I felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Not even anger anymore. Just nothing. I sat down on my couch and stared at the wall for a long time. Daniel's apology echoed in my head. 3 years. Multiple affairs. You were the foundation of everything good in my life. All true, probably. And all meaningless now. The door he'd closed wasn't just the door to my apartment. It was the door to 35 years of my life. And hearing him apologize, seeing him broken and remorseful, hadn't given me the closure I'd expected. Because closure, I was learning, wasn't something someone else could give you. It was something you had to create for yourself. I picked up my phone and called Patricia. Not because I needed legal advice, but because she was the only person who'd understand. "Eleanor, everything okay?" "Daniel was just here." A pause. "At your apartment? Did he threaten you? Because if he violated—" "No, nothing like that. He came to apologize. To take accountability," he said. "His therapist's orders. And I don't know how to feel about it. I spent a year wanting him to admit what he did, to recognize the damage, to say he was sorry. And now he has, and it doesn't change anything. I still feel empty." Patricia was quiet for a moment. Then, "Eleanor, can I tell you something? Off the record, not as your attorney, just as someone who's watched you go through this." "Yes." Revenge feels good in the moment. Winning feels good. But they don't heal you. They just give you breathing room to start healing yourself. What you're feeling right now, that emptiness, that's normal. You destroyed the old life, you punished the person who hurt you, and now you're standing in the rubble wondering what comes next. So what does come next? That's up to you. But my advice? Stop looking backward. Stop waiting for Daniel to give you something, closure, validation, whatever. He can't. Only you can give yourself those things. After we hung up, I sat with her words. Stop looking backward. I'd spent a year looking backward, documenting the past, fighting over what was. Maybe it was time to start looking forward. That evening, I did something I hadn't done since the affair came to light. I went through the boxes I'd packed from our old house, the ones I'd been avoiding, the ones filled with photos and mementos from our marriage. I opened them one by one in my small living room. Our wedding album. Photos of baby Benjamin, toddler Claire. Family vacations and holiday celebrations and ordinary moments that had seemed important once. I looked at the young couple in those wedding photos, 22 and 24, so sure they were going to make it. So confident in their forever. I didn't feel anger looking at those photos. I didn't feel regret either, exactly. Those people had existed. That love, however flawed, had been real in its moment. But they were gone now. Both of them. I took out a few photos, ones of just the kids, ones that showed moments I wanted to remember. The rest, I packed back up. I'd give them to Benjamin and Claire. Let them decide what to keep. As for me, I was done living in the past. The next morning, I started looking for a house to buy. Not in the suburbs this time. Something smaller, closer to the city. A fresh start in every sense. I found it 3 weeks later, a renovated row house in the museum district, walking distance from restaurants and shops and the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, a small backyard with a garden bed. Room for me and space for the kids when they visited, but not so big I'd rattle around in it alone. I made an offer that day. It was accepted within hours. Closing was scheduled for early January. By then, I'd be 58 and a half. Starting a new life in a new home, with money in the bank and no one to answer to. It should have felt terrifying. Instead, it felt like possibility. Claire came up for Thanksgiving. Benjamin couldn't make it. He'd started dating someone in Seattle and was spending the holiday with her family. But Claire stayed for 4 days, and we cooked together and walked around Richmond and talked about everything except Daniel. On her last night, we sat in my apartment with wine and leftover pie. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you think you'll ever date again? Ever try to find someone else? I considered it. A year ago, the thought would have seemed absurd. 6 months ago, it would have felt like betrayal. Now? Maybe, I said. Someday. But not for a while. I need to figure out who I am on my own first. I went straight from my parents' house to college to marriage. I've never been just me. And how's that going? Being just you? I smiled. It's harder than I expected. But also better. I'm learning things about myself I never knew. Like I hate silence, I always have music playing now. And I love spicy food, but I never cooked it because your dad hated it. And I'm actually really good at being alone. You don't get lonely. Sometimes. But lonely and alone aren't the same thing. I was lonely in my marriage for years. At least now when I'm lonely, it's honest. Claire reached over and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you, Mom. I know I was angry at first, about Thanksgiving and everything. But looking back, you did what you had to do. And you're happier now, I can tell. Am I? You are. You're different. Stronger. More yourself, somehow. After Claire left, I thought about her words. Was I happier? I wasn't sure happiness was the right word. But I was more at peace. More grounded. More real. Maybe that was better than happy. In December, I ran into Margaret Torres at the grocery store. She'd been one of my closest colleagues at school, and I hadn't seen her since my retirement party. Eleanor. How are you? We miss you at school. I miss you too. How's the year going? We chatted about school politics and difficult students and the new principal's questionable policies. Then Margaret said, I heard about your divorce. I'm sorry you went through that. Thank you. It's been difficult, but I'm doing okay. I also heard it was quite the courtroom battle. The teachers' lounge gossip mill has been working overtime. I felt my face flush. I'd known people would talk, but hearing it confirmed still stung. I'm sure they have, I said carefully. Margaret touched my arm. For what it's worth, everyone's on your side. When the story came out about the affairs and the hidden money, Eleanor, we all understood why you did what you did. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty about fighting back. Her words meant more than I'd expected. I'd been carrying so much shame about the public nature of it all, about the scene at Thanksgiving, about the trial. But Margaret was right. I had nothing to be ashamed of. Thank you, I said. I needed to hear that. After we parted ways, I finished my shopping with a lighter heart. The people who mattered understood. The people who didn't understand didn't matter. Christmas came and went quietly. Benjamin was still in Seattle. Claire came for Christmas Eve but had to work Christmas Day at the hospital. I spent Christmas morning alone, which should have felt depressing but didn't. I made myself an elaborate breakfast. I watched old movies. I FaceTimed with Janet and her family. I existed peacefully in my own company. And I realized something, I was okay. Not healed completely, Not done processing everything that had happened. But okay. Surviving. Moving forward. That was enough. On New Year's Eve, I did something impulsive. I went to a party, a fundraiser for the art museum that I'd seen advertised. I bought a ticket, put on a nice dress, and went alone. The museum was beautiful that night, lit up and decorated for the holiday. I wandered through the galleries with a glass of champagne, looking at paintings and sculptures, eavesdropping on conversations. And I met someone. His name was Robert Chen, a professor of art history at VCU, recently widowed, attending the party alone like me. We started talking about a particular Monet painting, and before I knew it, an hour had passed. He was kind, intelligent, easy to talk to. When he asked for my number, I gave it to him. I'm not ready for anything serious, I warned him. I'm just coming out of a very difficult divorce. I'm not ready for serious either, he said with a sad smile. I lost my wife 2 years ago. I'm still figuring out how to be a person without her. But coffee sometime? Just as friends. Coffee as friends sounds perfect. We exchanged numbers. He texted me the next day, and we made plans for the following week. I didn't know if it would lead anywhere. I didn't know if I wanted it to. But for the first time in over a year, I felt a flutter of possibility. Not for romance necessarily, but for connection. For building something new. The week before my closing on the new house, I had one final meeting with Patricia to review everything. All the paperwork was in order. The asset transfers were complete. The spousal support was being paid on time every month. From a legal perspective, my divorce was done. How are you feeling? Patricia asked. Relieved. Scared. Excited. All of it. That sounds about right. She smiled. You know, in all my years practicing family law, I've never had a client fight as hard as you did. Or win as completely. You should be proud of yourself. I am. But I'm also aware of what it cost. My children's innocence about their parents. My reputation in certain circles. Daniel's entire life. Daniel destroyed Daniel's life. You just made sure he didn't take yours down with him. Is that how you see it? That's how it is, Eleanor. You didn't start this. He did. You just finished it. I left Patricia's office for the last time feeling oddly nostalgic. She'd been my warrior, my advocate, my ally in the trenches. Now that the war was over, I'd probably never see her again. But I'd carry the lessons she taught me forever. Fight for yourself. Document everything. Never apologize for demanding what you deserve. Those lessons had saved my life. On January 7th, I closed on my new house. Benjamin flew in for the occasion, and Claire drove up from Charlotte. We spent the weekend moving my boxes from the apartment, painting the second bedroom, hanging curtains. It felt like a new beginning. Not just a new house, but a new chapter. A new life. That night, after the kids had gone to bed in their shared guest room, I sat alone in my new living room. The house still smelled like paint and possibility. My furniture looked different here, smaller somehow, but that was okay. This space was mine to fill however I wanted. I pulled out my journal. I'd kept writing in it even after the trial, using it to process everything that came after. January the 7th. Moved into the new house today. Benjamin and Claire helped. We laughed a lot, which felt good. Felt normal. This morning, I drove past our old house. The new family has moved in. I saw their kids playing in the yard, a dog running around. It looks happy there. Different, but happy. I thought seeing it would hurt. But it didn't. That house was part of my old life, and my old life is gone. This house is my new beginning. And I'm ready for it. Coffee with Robert tomorrow. Still not sure what I'm looking for, but I'm willing to find out. That feels like progress. A year ago, I found those text messages and my world exploded. Now I'm putting together a new world, piece by piece. It doesn't look like I thought it would. But it's mine. Every part of it is mine. And maybe that's what freedom really means. Not winning. Not revenge. Just ownership. Ownership of your choices, your life, your future. Daniel took a lot from me. But he didn't take this. He didn't take my ability to rebuild. To start over. To become someone new. Asterisk, I'm not the woman I was. I'm not even the woman I was during the divorce. I'm becoming someone else entirely. Someone I'm still getting to know. Asterisk. Asterisk, and I think I'm going to like her. Asterisk. I closed the journal and looked around my new living room. Empty walls waiting for art. Bookshelves waiting for books. A life waiting to be lived. Outside, I could hear the city, traffic, voices, music from somewhere down the street. Urban sounds instead of suburban silence. Different, but not bad. Just different. And different was exactly what I needed. February brought snow to Richmond, rare and beautiful. I woke up in my new house to find everything covered in white, the whole world transformed overnight. It felt symbolic somehow. Even the familiar could become something entirely new if conditions were right. I'd been in the house for a month. I'd furnished it slowly, deliberately, choosing pieces I actually liked instead of pieces that matched some imagined ideal of what a home should look like. My living room was eclectic, a vintage velvet couch in deep green, mismatched throw pillows, artwork I'd bought from local galleries. It looked nothing like the coordinated suburban aesthetic of my old house. It looked like me, whoever that was. Coffee with Robert had turned into dinner, which had turned into a standing weekly date. Not romantic dates, we were both clear about that. Just two people who'd lost themselves in previous lives learning to be themselves again in the present. He told me about his wife, Rebecca, who'd died of breast cancer at 53. About the grief that had swallowed him whole for 2 years. About the slow, painful process of learning to exist without her. I told him about Daniel. About the affair, the divorce, the courtroom battle. About becoming someone I didn't recognize in order to survive. Do you regret it? He asked one evening over Thai food. The way you handled it. Sometimes. Late at night, when I can't sleep, I wonder if I went too far. If I was cruel. Were you? Probably. But he was cruel first. 2 wrongs don't make a right, as the saying goes. No. But sometimes 2 wrongs make even. I pushed around my pad thai. Does that make me a bad person? I think it makes you human. Hurt people hurt people. You were hurt, so you hurt back. It's not noble, but it's honest. I appreciated his refusal to judge me. Most people, when they heard the story, took sides immediately. Team Eleanor or Team Daniel. But Robert just listened and reflected back what he heard without condemning either of us. Rebecca and I had a good marriage, he said one night in late February. We were at his apartment this time, a faculty housing unit near VCU. Not perfect, but good. Real. And when she died, I felt like I'd lost my anchor. Like I was drifting in space with nothing to hold on to. That's what I felt like when I found out about the affair. Like gravity had stopped working. But you fought. You grabbed onto something, anger, maybe, or justice, and you held on tight until you found solid ground again. And you. I just drifted for a long time. Eventually, I washed up on shore. Not the same shore I'd left from, but somewhere new. He smiled. I think that's what we're both doing now. Finding new shores. I like that metaphor. Finding new shores. Not going back to where we'd been, but discovering entirely new territory. In March, I got a letter. Not an email, an actual physical letter. Forwarded from my old address. The return address was an assisted living facility in Glen Allen. The name was unfamiliar. Dorothy Pritchard. Daniel's mother. I'd seen her maybe once a year during our marriage, always stiff visits where she'd criticize my housekeeping or parenting with thin-lipped disapproval. Daniel always said she was difficult, which was generous. She'd never liked me, had never thought I was good enough for her son. After the divorce, I'd assumed I'd never hear from her again. Why would I want to? But curiosity made me open the letter. Asterisk, dear Eleanor, asterisk. Asterisk, you don't know me well, and I doubt you have any interest in hearing from me. But I'm 83 years old now, and I don't have time left for pretense. Asterisk. Asterisk, I was wrong about you. For 35 years, I was wrong. Asterisk. Asterisk, Daniel told me what happened. Not his version, he tried to, but I stopped him. I made him tell me the truth. All of it. The affairs. The lying. The hidden money. What he said to you at that mediation. Asterisk. Asterisk, I raised him better than that. Or I thought I did. But somewhere along the way, he became a man who thought he deserved more than he had, who thought rules didn't apply to him. And I enabled it. Every time he was irresponsible, I covered for him. Every time he made excuses, I believed them. Asterisk. Asterisk, I owe you an apology. You gave my son the best years of your life. You raised my grandchildren to be good people. You supported his career and his dreams while sacrificing your own. Asterisk. Asterisk, and he repaid you with betrayal. Asterisk. Asterisk, I'm not writing to ask you to forgive him. That's between you and him. I'm writing to ask you to forgive yourself, for whatever you think you did wrong in fighting back. Because from where I sit, you did nothing wrong. You fought for yourself when no one else would. That's not cruelty. That's survival. Asterisk. Asterisk, I hope you're building a good life now, Eleanor. You deserve one. Asterisk. Asterisk, respectfully. Asterisk. Asterisk, Dorothy Pritchard. Asterisk. I read the letter 3 times, sitting at my kitchen table while my coffee went cold. Dorothy Pritchard, difficult, judgmental Dorothy, was apologizing to me, taking my side against her own son. I didn't know how to feel about that. Part of me wanted to frame the letter, to preserve it as vindication. See? Even his mother thinks I was right. But another part of me just felt sad. Because Dorothy's letter was another piece of collateral damage. Another relationship fractured by what Daniel had done. I thought about responding, but what would I say? Thank you for the apology. It's okay, I understand. None of that felt true. Instead, I filed the letter away with my divorce papers, one more document in the archive of my old life. In April, Benjamin called with news. He was getting married. Her name was Amy, the woman he'd been dating in Seattle. They'd known each other for 8 months, but when you know, he said. I want both you and Dad at the wedding, he said carefully. I know that's asking a lot. But you're both my parents, and I want you both there. My first instinct was to refuse. To tell him he had to choose, that I couldn't sit in the same room as Daniel, that it was too much to ask. But then I thought about Benjamin. About the fact that he hadn't asked to be caught in the middle of his parents' war. About the fact that his wedding day should be about him and Amy, not about me and Daniel. Okay, I said. I'll be there. And I'll be civil. Thank you, Mom. That means everything. The wedding was scheduled for September in Seattle. I had 5 months to prepare myself mentally for seeing Daniel again. For sitting through a ceremony with him across the aisle. For pretending, at least for one day, that we were a normal divorced couple instead of the wreckage we actually were. I could do that. For Benjamin, I could do that. In May, I went to my first therapy session. I'd resisted therapy throughout the divorce. I told myself I was handling things, that I didn't need help, that I was strong enough to get through it alone. But Robert had gently suggested it one evening. You've been through trauma, Eleanor. Major trauma. And you're doing amazingly well, but sometimes having a professional to process with can help. So I found a therapist. Her name was Dr. Linda Morrison, and she specialized in life transitions and trauma recovery. In our first session, she asked me what I wanted to get from therapy. I want to stop feeling guilty, I said. For what I did. How I handled the divorce. The public humiliation, the courtroom battle, all of it. I know I was justified, but I can't shake the feeling that I was also cruel. Tell me about that. The guilt. I destroyed him. Financially, professionally, personally. I took everything. And sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and think, what kind of person does that? What kind of person gets revenge like that and feels good about it? Do you feel good about it? I thought about it honestly. Not good, exactly. But not bad either. Satisfied, maybe, like justice was served. And why do you think feeling satisfied about justice is wrong? Because it makes me sound vindictive. Cold. Like I enjoyed his suffering. Did you enjoy his suffering? Sometimes. Yes. Is that terrible? Dr. Morrison leaned back in her chair. Eleanor, you experienced profound betrayal by someone you trusted completely for 35 years. He didn't just have an affair, he had multiple affairs over multiple years while hiding money and lying constantly. When you discovered it, you had 2 choices. Absorb the pain silently or fight back. You fought back. And yes, that caused him pain. But his pain was a consequence of his actions, not your cruelty. But the way I did it, Thanksgiving, the trial, was designed to make sure he couldn't minimize or hide what he'd done. You made his betrayal public because he'd been conducting it privately while you suffered alone. You balanced the scales. So I'm not a terrible person. You're a person who was terribly hurt and who fought back with every weapon at her disposal. That doesn't make you terrible. It makes you human. I cried in that session. Not from sadness, but from relief. Someone finally understood. Someone finally saw the impossible choice I'd faced and didn't judge me for the choice I'd made. Over the following weeks, Dr. Morrison and I worked through layers of guilt and shame I'd been carrying. Not just about the divorce, but about everything. About not being a perfect mother. About resenting my career sacrifices. About all the ways I'd felt inadequate throughout my marriage. You've spent your whole life trying to be perfect, she said in one session. The perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect teacher. And when that perfection didn't protect you from betrayal, you felt like you'd failed. Didn't I? No, Eleanor. You can't prevent someone else from betraying you through your own perfection. That's not how it works. Daniel's affair wasn't a reflection of your inadequacy. It was a reflection of his character. That concept, that his betrayal wasn't about me, took months to internalize. But slowly, session by session, I started to believe it. I also started to understand something else. Forgiveness wasn't about him. It was about me. Do I have to forgive him? I asked Dr. Morrison in June. Do you want to? I don't know. Everyone says forgiveness is for yourself, not for the other person. That holding on to anger just hurts you. But I don't feel hurt by my anger. I feel defined by it, maybe? Like it's part of who I am now. Then maybe you don't forgive him. Maybe you just make peace with what happened and move forward. Forgiveness is optional, Eleanor. Peace isn't. Peace, not forgiveness. I like that distinction. By July, I'd made peace with most of it. Not all. There were still nights when I'd wake up angry, nights when I'd replay the "you're a burden" moment and feel rage burn through me. But those nights were getting rarer. And on the good days, I felt something unexpected, gratitude. Not for the affair or the betrayal, but for the fact that it had happened when it did, while I still had time to build a new life. If Daniel had waited until we were 70, until I was too old and tired to fight back, I'd have spent my final years in bitterness and resignation. Instead, I had a second chance. At 58, I was still young enough to start over. To build something new. To discover who Eleanor Pritchard was when she wasn't defined by someone else. That was a gift, in its own twisted way. In late August, I flew to Seattle for Benjamin's wedding. Claire came too, and we shared a hotel room, laughing and talking like we hadn't in years. The wedding was beautiful. Benjamin looked handsome in his tux, Amy radiant in her dress. They'd written their own vows, promising to be honest with each other, to communicate openly, to never let resentment fester. I wondered if they'd keep those promises. I hoped they would. I hoped they'd learned from their parents' mistakes. Daniel was there, sitting on the groom's side with his parents. He looked better than he had in November, still thin, still older, but more put together. He'd gotten a job working for a property management company, Benjamin had told me. Not his own business anymore, but steady work. We didn't speak during the ceremony, but at the reception, during the father-son dance, I watched Daniel waltz with Benjamin, and I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, exactly, but acceptance. Acceptance that this man I'd spent 35 years with was still Benjamin's father. Still part of my story, even if he wasn't part of my future. After the dance, Daniel approached my table. Eleanor, you look well. Thank you. So do you. Can we talk? Just for a minute. I glanced at Claire, who gave me a small nod. Okay. We stepped out onto the hotel balcony. Seattle spread out below us, lights twinkling in the evening dusk. I meant what I said in November, Daniel began. The apology. I am sorry. Genuinely. I know. And I want you to know that I'm doing better. Therapy. Mostly. Working on myself. Trying to figure out who I am without the lies and the image maintenance. Good. I'm glad. Are you? He looked at me searchingly. Glad that I'm doing better. I thought about it. Yes. Because it means Benjamin and Claire still have a father. Not a great one, maybe, but one who's trying. That matters to them, so it matters to me. Just to them. Just to them, I confirmed. Daniel nodded slowly. That's fair. More than fair. He paused. I heard you're seeing someone. A professor. We're friends. It's not serious. But you're happy. I'm getting there. Good. And he sounded like he meant it. You deserve to be happy, Eleanor. I know I'm the last person who should say that, but it's true. We stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the city lights. I don't forgive you, I said suddenly. I need you to know that. I've made peace with what happened, but I don't forgive you. I probably never will. I understand. But I don't hate you anymore either. I'm just indifferent. You're part of my past, and my past is done. Daniel smiled sadly. Indifference. I suppose that's better than hatred. It's better for me, anyway. We went back inside. We maintained polite distance for the rest of the evening. When Benjamin and Amy cut the cake, when they had their first dance, when they left in a shower of sparklers, Daniel and I were both there, both smiling, both celebrating our son. Not together. But not enemies either. Just two people who'd once loved each other and who'd failed spectacularly at that love, but who'd succeeded in creating two incredible children. Maybe that was enough. On the flight home to Richmond, I thought about forgiveness. Real forgiveness, the kind that releases you from the weight of what was done to you. I didn't forgive Daniel. Maybe I never would. But I was learning to forgive myself. For not being perfect. For not preventing the affair. For fighting back viciously when I was hurt. For all the ways I'd failed to live up to some imagined ideal of grace and dignity. I was human. I'd been hurt. I'd hurt back. And now I was moving forward. That wasn't a perfect story. But it was an honest one. And honest, I was learning, was better than perfect. October arrived with crisp air and falling leaves, and I woke up on my 59th birthday feeling something I hadn't felt in years, content. Not happy in the effortless way young people are happy, before life teaches them how complicated happiness can be. But content. Satisfied with where I was and who I was becoming. I'd lived in my house for 9 months now. The walls were no longer empty, they were covered with art I'd collected from local galleries and street markets. The bookshelves were full of books I'd always meant to read but never had time for. The garden I'd planted in spring was yielding late tomatoes and herbs. It was mine. Every inch of it was mine. Robert and I were still seeing each other, though neither of us had pushed to define what we were. Sometimes I thought we might eventually become more than friends. Other times, I thought maybe friendship was exactly what we both needed. The uncertainty didn't bother me the way it once would have. I'd learned to sit with ambiguity. That morning, both of my children called to wish me happy birthday. Benjamin from Seattle, where he and Amy were settling into married life. Claire from Charlotte, where she'd just been promoted to head nurse in her unit. I'm proud of you, Mom, Claire said. For everything. For surviving Dad's bullshit, for fighting back, for building this new life. Thank you, sweetheart. I mean it. You're kind of my hero. After we hung up, I sat with those words. Hero. I didn't feel like a hero. Heroes were noble and selfless and pure. I'd been angry and vindictive and ruthless. But maybe that was okay. Maybe real heroes weren't the ones who took the high road. Maybe they were the ones who fought back when fighting back was the only option. The ones who survived. That afternoon, I met Janet for lunch at a cafe near my house. She'd driven down from Maryland for my birthday, insisting she wasn't going to let me spend it alone. You look good, she said as we settled into our table. Really good. Different. Different how? Lighter. Like you're not carrying the weight of the world anymore. I'm not carrying the weight of a terrible marriage anymore. That helps. Janet laughed. True. Then her expression turned serious. Eleanor, I need to ask you something. And I want an honest answer. Okay. Do you regret it? Any of it? I'd been asked this question before, by different people in different contexts. But this time, sitting across from my sister in the autumn sunlight, I really thought about it. I regret that it happened at all. I regret 35 years with someone who didn't value me. But do I regret how I handled it? No. Not anymore. Even the cruel parts. Especially the cruel parts. Because those were the parts where I chose myself. Where I said, my pain matters more than your comfort. My truth matters more than your image. And Eleanor Pritchard matters, period. Janet reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm glad you found that. Some people never do. That evening, alone in my house, I pulled out my journal for the last time. Not to document pain or plan revenge, but to close this chapter. October the 15th. 59 years old. 2 years since I found those first text messages and my world imploded. I've been thinking about the woman I was then. The one who vacuumed and cooked and taught and smiled and slowly disappeared into the background of her own life. The one who thought being good and kind and selfless was enough. The one who thought if she just tried hard enough, love would be enough. That woman is gone. She died somewhere between September and Thanksgiving 2 years ago, between discovering the affair and serving those divorce papers at the dinner table. I don't mourn her. She was tired and invisible and so afraid of taking up space. The woman I became during the divorce, the warrior, the destroyer, she's gone too. I needed her for a while. I needed her steel spine and her ruthlessness and her absolute refusal to accept less than she deserved. She saved my life. But she's not who I want to be forever. So who am I now? I'm still figuring that out. But I know some things. I'm a woman who takes up space unapologetically, who eats what she wants and buys what she likes and lives how she chooses. I'm a woman who values honesty over harmony, who'd rather be alone than diminished, who knows the difference between loneliness and solitude. I'm a woman who fought back when she was hurt, who didn't go quietly into the background, who refused to be erased. I'm a woman with regrets and scars and unresolved anger, but also with peace and possibility and hard-won wisdom. I'm not perfect. I'm not noble. I'm not even particularly nice sometimes. But I'm mine. Finally, completely, mine. And that's worth more than anything I lost. I closed the journal and put it away in the drawer of my nightstand. Maybe someday I'd look back at it and be embarrassed by the rawness of it all. Or maybe I'd be grateful for the record of how I survived. Either way, I was done writing in it. This chapter of my life, the betrayal, the divorce, the aftermath, was over. What came next was unwritten. The next day, I did something I'd been thinking about for months. I enrolled in an art class at the local community center. Painting, something I'd loved as a young woman but had given up when life got busy. When Daniel's career took priority. When there was no time left for things that were just for me. The class met Tuesday evenings. 8 other students, mostly retirees, all of us trying something new or returning to something old. The instructor was a patient woman in her 70s who talked about art like it was a conversation with yourself. Don't paint what you think you should paint, she told us in the first class. Paint what you need to paint. Let the canvas tell your truth. I set up my easel, faced the blank canvas, and felt a flutter of panic. What truth did I need to tell? But then I picked up the brush, dipped it in paint, and just started. No plan, no image in mind. Just movement and color and instinct. What emerged over the following weeks surprised me. Dark colors at first, deep blues and blacks and grays, slashing across the canvas in angry strokes. The instructor walked by during the 3rd session and paused. That's powerful, she said. What is it? I don't know yet. Good. Let it tell you. By the 6th session, lighter colors had started appearing. Not bright, exactly, but present. Muted golds and soft greens emerging from the darkness. The painting wasn't pretty. It wasn't something you'd hang in a hotel lobby. But it was honest. It was me. The darkness of what I'd been through, and the light I was finding on the other side. In November, I got an unexpected email from Patricia. She was writing an article for a legal journal about high-asset divorce cases and wanted to interview me about my experience. With my permission and with my name changed, of course. Your case was textbook in terms of documentation and strategy, she wrote. But it was also remarkable in how you maintained your resolve throughout. I think your story could help other women in similar situations understand that they have options. That they don't have to accept betrayal quietly. I thought about it for a few days. Part of me wanted to keep my story private, to let it fade into the past. But another part of me remembered how alone I'd felt in those early months. How desperately I'd searched for stories of other women who'd fought back and survived. Maybe my story could be that for someone else. Yes, I wrote back. You can use my story. Just change enough details that no one can identify me. I don't need the notoriety. But if it helps even one woman find her strength, it's worth it. Patricia's article came out in December. She sent me a copy. Reading it was surreal, seeing my life reduced to a case study, my pain transformed into legal precedent. But she'd done it justice. She'd captured not just the strategy but the why behind it. The determination to be seen, to be valued, to refuse erasure. In cases like Mrs. A's, Patricia wrote in her conclusion, we often ask whether the wronged party went too far in seeking retribution. But perhaps we should instead ask, why do we expect victims of betrayal to respond with grace and dignity? Why do we demand that they protect the reputation of the person who destroyed them? Mrs. A refused those expectations. She fought back with everything she had. And while her methods may seem harsh, they achieved something crucial. They gave her back her power. In the end, that may be worth more than any asset division. I read those words 3 times. She'd understood. She'd seen what I was really fighting for. It wasn't about the money or the house or even the revenge. It was about power. About reclaiming agency in a life where someone else had tried to steal it. Christmas came quietly. Benjamin and Amy couldn't make it. They were spending the holiday with her family in Boston. Claire came for Christmas Eve but had to work Christmas Day again. Robert invited me to spend Christmas with him and his adult children, who were flying in from out of state. I met them on Christmas afternoon, his daughter Lauren, a lawyer in D.C., and his son Marcus, a teacher in Philadelphia. They were gracious and kind, clearly protective of their father but willing to be welcoming to me. We had dinner together, all of us strangers learning to be comfortable in the same room. Lauren asked about my teaching career. Marcus and I talked about education policy. Robert made his late wife's traditional Christmas dessert, and we all toasted to absent loved ones and new beginnings. It wasn't the Christmas I'd imagined when I was 22 and newly married. But it was good. Real. Honest. And maybe that was better than the fantasy anyway. On New Year's Eve, instead of going to a party, I stayed home. I made myself dinner, something elaborate and spicy that Daniel would have hated. I poured good wine. I put on music and danced alone in my living room, something I never would have done before. At midnight, I stood on my back porch in the cold, watching fireworks bloom over the city. And I made myself a promise. This year, I wouldn't define myself by what I'd lost or what I'd survived. This year, I'd define myself by what I was building. By who I was becoming. Not Daniel's ex-wife. Not a victim. Not even a survivor, really. Just Eleanor. Just me. January brought a surprise. Daniel reached out, not directly, but through Benjamin. He wanted to meet for coffee. Just to talk, Benjamin said. No agenda, no requests. Just closure, maybe, or conversation. I almost said no. What was left to say? We'd said everything that mattered in the courtroom and on that balcony in Seattle. But something made me agree. Maybe curiosity. Maybe a final need to see who he'd become. Maybe just the desire to prove to myself that I could sit across from him without anger or pain. We met at a neutral coffee shop near VCU on a cold Tuesday morning. Daniel arrived first. I saw him through the window, sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. He stood when I walked in. Eleanor, thank you for coming. This was your idea. I assume you have something to say. Saturday. We ordered coffee. And then Daniel took a deep breath. I've been doing a lot of work in therapy. A lot of hard work, looking at why I did what I did. And I think I finally understand something. Which is? I was always running. From responsibility, from aging, from the reality of what I'd built. I had this good life, you, the kids, the career, and instead of appreciating it, I was terrified of it. Terrified that it wasn't enough. That I wasn't enough. So you sabotaged it. Yes. I sabotaged it. And I blamed you for my unhappiness instead of recognizing that I was the problem. I sipped my coffee. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to know that none of it was your fault. You were a good wife. A good partner. You did everything right. And I still destroyed it because I was broken. I already know that, Daniel. I've known that for a while now. But did you believe it? Or did you still carry some part of the blame? Some thought that if you'd been different or better or more something, I wouldn't have cheated. He'd touched something true. Even after all the therapy, all the work I'd done, there was still a small voice that whispered. But what if you'd been thinner? More exciting? Less demanding? I'm working on believing it, I said. Good. Because Eleanor, you were never the problem. You were never inadequate. You were never a burden. He said that last word with particular emphasis. You were the best thing in my life, and I was too stupid and selfish to see it. We sat in silence for a moment. Are you happy now? I asked. Living your new life. I'm getting there. I'm dating someone, nothing serious, just companionship. I have my job. I see the kids when I can. I'm learning to live with less and be okay with it. He smiled wryly. Turns out I didn't need the big house and the fancy car and the image. I just thought I did. What about Jessica? That ended a long time ago. She was a symptom, not a solution. I see that now. Good. We finished our coffee. We talked about the kids, Benjamin's marriage, Claire's promotion. Neutral topics, safe ground. As we prepared to leave, Daniel said, I don't expect us to be friends. I know I burned that bridge completely, but I hope we can be civil. For the kids' sake. We can be civil, I agreed. I proved that at Benjamin's wedding. You did. You were gracious. More gracious than I deserved. We parted ways in the parking lot. As I watched him drive away in his modest sedan, no more Lexus, no more luxury, I felt a sense of completion. Not forgiveness, still. But closure. He was no longer the villain in my story. He was just a flawed man who'd made terrible choices and was living with the consequences. And I was no longer the victim in his story. I was just a woman who'd fought back and moved on. We were done. Finally. Truly done. That night, I had dinner with Robert. I told him about the coffee meeting, about the conversation. How do you feel? He asked. Lighter. Like I've been carrying this heavy box of anger and resentment, and I finally got to set it down. That's good. That's really good, Eleanor. Robert, can I ask you something? Of course. Where is this going? Us, I mean. Are we building towards something, or are we just existing together? He smiled. I don't know. Does that bother you? No. That's the weird part. It used to bother me, not knowing, not having a plan. But now I kind of like it. The uncertainty. The possibility. Me too. I spent 2 years after Rebecca died thinking I'd never feel anything for anyone again. And now here you are, and I feel something. I don't know what to call it yet. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I'm here too. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't make any declarations or promises. We just held hands across the table and existed in the comfortable uncertainty of two people learning to love again, slowly and carefully and without guarantees. And that felt exactly right. February brought the article Patricia had written appearing in the legal journal. She sent me a copy, and I was surprised to see how much traffic it had generated online. Comments from other attorneys, from divorce mediators, from women sharing their own stories. One comment in particular caught my eye. Thank you for sharing this case. I'm going through a similar situation right now, just found out about my husband's affair, and I've been paralyzed with fear about what to do. Reading about Mrs. A's strategic approach gave me hope that I can get through this. That I don't have to just accept his apology and move on. That I can fight for myself. This article might have saved my life. I read that comment over and over. My story, my pain, my fight, my victory, had helped someone. Had given them strength when they needed it most. Maybe that was the real point of it all. Not the revenge, not the money, not even the justice. But the example. The proof that a woman could be betrayed and devastated and still fight back. Still win. Still rebuild. In March, I took my first solo trip. Not to Charleston, I'd already reclaimed that. But to Santa Fe, a city I'd always wanted to visit. I spent a week wandering through art galleries and museums, eating at local restaurants, hiking in the red rocks outside the city. I was alone, but not lonely. There's a difference, I'd learned. Lonely is wanting someone else to fill a void. Alone is being complete in yourself. I took photos not of the scenery but of myself. Selfies in front of Georgia O'Keeffe's house. Pictures of my feet on hiking trails. Images of me at cafe tables with coffee and books. Documentation that I was here, that I existed, that I was living a life that was mine. On the last day of the trip, I bought a painting from a local artist, an abstract landscape in oranges and purples that reminded me of the New Mexico sunset. It was expensive, more than I would have spent in my old life. But I could afford it now. And I wanted it. So I bought it. When I got home, I hung it in my living room where it caught the afternoon light. Every time I looked at it, I remembered that week. Remembered being alone and content. Remembered choosing myself. That painting became a promise to myself. I would keep choosing me. Every single day. In April, on a Tuesday evening after my art class, I ran into someone from my old life. Lisa Kowalski, a woman I'd known from school functions when Benjamin and Claire were young. Her son had been in Benjamin's class. Eleanor Pritchard. Oh my God, I haven't seen you in years. How are you? We made small talk. She asked about the kids. Then, inevitably, and how's Daniel? Are you two still in that big house in the West End? We divorced, I said simply. About 2 years ago. Lisa's face fell. Oh, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. What happened? A year ago, I would have given a vague answer. We grew apart. It just didn't work out. Something polite and non-committal. But I was done protecting Daniel's image. He had multiple affairs over several years. I filed for divorce when I found out. Lisa's mouth opened. Daniel? Really? He always seemed so devoted to you. Yes, well, people aren't always what they seem. I'm so sorry, Eleanor. That must have been devastating. It was. But I'm doing well now. Better than I was in the marriage, honestly. We exchanged numbers, promised to get coffee sometime, and parted ways. As I walked to my car, I felt proud of myself. Not for sharing the truth, that was easy now. But for not feeling ashamed of it. For not carrying Daniel's betrayal as my failure. His choices were his. My life was mine. In May, I made a decision that surprised even me. I started volunteering at a women's shelter, working with women who were leaving abusive relationships, teaching life skills classes, budgeting, job applications, that sort of thing. But also just being present, listening, bearing witness to their stories. One woman, a 34-year-old named Tammy, reminded me so much of my younger self. Scared, uncertain, convinced she couldn't make it alone. I don't know how to be without him, she told me one afternoon. I've been with him since I was 19. I don't know who I am by myself. That's okay, I said. You'll figure it out. And it's scary, but it's also exciting. You get to discover yourself. You get to become whoever you want to be. But what if I'm not strong enough? I looked at her, this woman who'd survived abuse, who'd found the courage to leave, who was sitting here asking for help instead of giving up. You're already strong enough, I said. You just don't know it yet. Volunteering at the shelter became one of the most meaningful parts of my new life. It reminded me why I'd fought so hard. Not just for myself, but for every woman who'd ever been made to feel small. Every woman who'd been told she was a burden. Every woman who'd been erased in someone else's story. We all deserved to be the heroes of our own stories. And sometimes that meant fighting back. By June, I'd been divorced for 2 years. 2 years of rebuilding, relearning, rediscovering. And I realized something, I was happy. Not the uncomplicated happiness of ignorance. Not the false happiness of pretending everything was fine. But the real, deep happiness that comes from living authentically. From knowing yourself and liking what you find. I threw myself a party, a small one, just close friends. Robert, Janet and Tom, Claire who drove up for the occasion, Margaret Torres from my old school, a few women from my art class, and Tammy from the shelter, who'd become a friend. We gathered in my backyard on a warm June evening, eating and drinking and laughing. And at one point, I looked around at these people, this collection of new friends and old, this community I'd built from scratch, and I felt overwhelmed with gratitude. This was my life. These were my people. This was what I'd fought for. Robert found me in the kitchen refilling wine glasses. You look happy, he said. I am. I really am. Good. You've earned it. He paused. Eleanor, I need to tell you something. My stomach clenched. Here it comes, I thought. He's met someone else. He's moving away. I'm falling in love with you, he said. I wasn't sure if I could feel that again after Rebecca. But I do. I am. And I needed you to know. I stared at him. Robert. You don't have to say it back. I know you're still figuring things out. I just couldn't not tell you anymore. I set down the wine bottle and took his hands. I think I'm falling in love with you too. It scares the hell out of me, but I am. He smiled. Why does it scare you? Because last time I loved someone, he destroyed me. And I don't know if I can survive that again. You won't have to. Because I'm not Daniel. And you're not the same person you were then. If we do this, if we try, it'll be different. Better. Real. Promise. I can't promise I won't hurt you. People hurt each other sometimes even when they don't mean to. But I can promise I'll never lie to you. I'll never betray you. And I'll never make you feel like you're a burden. Those last words broke something open in me. I kissed him there in my kitchen with my friends laughing in the backyard and 2 years of pain finally behind me. And it felt like hope. Like possibility. Like a new chapter beginning. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Robert had kissed me goodnight at the door, I stood alone in my living room. The house was messy from the party. Dishes in the sink, empty glasses on tables, the detritus of celebration. I'd clean it tomorrow. Tonight, I just wanted to stand here and feel it. This life. This peace. This hard one, fought for, chosen everyday contentment. I thought about the woman I'd been 3 years ago. The one who'd vacuumed religiously and cooked Daniel's favorite meals and slowly disappeared into the background. I thought about the woman I'd become during the divorce. The warrior. The destroyer. The one who'd made Daniel pay for every lie. And I thought about the woman I was now. Not perfect. Not unscathed. But real. Whole. Mine. All 3 of those women were me. The lost one, the fierce one, the found one. I needed all of them to get here. The lost one taught me what I was missing. The fierce one fought to reclaim it. The found one was learning how to keep it. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in months. I opened the folder where I kept all the evidence from the divorce. The text messages. The photos. The credit card statements. The documentation of Daniel's betrayal. I looked at it all one last time. Then I deleted it. Every file, every photo, every piece of proof. I didn't need it anymore. The past was documented in court records and legal precedent. It was part of my story, but it didn't need to live in my pocket. It didn't need to come with me into whatever came next. The evidence was gone. The proof was deleted. But the truth remained. And the truth was this: I'd been hurt. I'd fought back. I'd survived. And now I was building something new. That was the only story that mattered anymore. If you've made it this far, thank you for staying with me. Thank you for listening to my story, for witnessing my pain and my revenge and my rebirth. If any part of this resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible or betrayed or unsure if you had the strength to fight back, I want you to know something. You do. You have that strength. It might be buried under years of compromise and self-sacrifice and putting others first. But it's there. And when you need it, you'll find it. Because here's what I learned: you don't have to be perfect to deserve better. You don't have to be graceful in your pain. You don't have to forgive people who haven't earned it. And you absolutely don't have to put someone else's comfort above your own survival. You matter. Your pain matters. Your truth matters. And anyone who makes you feel like a burden doesn't deserve to carry the gift of your presence. So to everyone who's been betrayed, diminished, or erased, fight back. Document everything. Get good lawyers. Take what's yours. And don't apologize for demanding what you deserve. Your story doesn't end with someone else's betrayal. It ends with your choice to begin again. And that beginning? That's where the real living starts. Before I go, please check the description box below for more stories like this. Stories about women who refused to be victims, who fought for themselves, who chose their own happiness over someone else's comfort. Stories about survival and strength and starting over. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, You're never too old, never too late, never too broken to begin again. This was my story. Now go write yours.